hello, everybody. How the devil are we all? I am very well. I thank you for asking. Now, do I have a action-packed, fun-filled show for you all today? No, I don't, but I do have some bits of nonsense we can look at, so let's do that, I suppose. Yes. We're going to be taking a look at a couple of pieces of fluff, I suppose, in a way. So, well, one of it's very serious, one not so much. First of all, we're going to take a look at a thing that someone sent me that I thought was genuinely interesting, I suppose. I don't really even know how to properly describe what this is. When you maybe look up certain things online, you want to find like a reading of a certain book or whatever, there are lots of people who've done like readings of those books online, and usually it's some nondescript individual, right? Usually it's someone who you don't really necessarily know who that person is, and so it's sort of the fact that they're reading it is itself not shocking or out of the ordinary for you. And then sometimes, this is not the first time this has happened to me, by the way. Someone sent me another thing that this person has also recorded. Again, an audio book that someone else has written, or a piece of poetry or whatever, from the past. And sometimes it can be a little bit where are we? Hang on, sorry. Yeah, sometimes it can be a little bit strange. So someone sent me this. They wanted to find an audio book reading of the Communist Manifesto, the famous Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels short story about a fairy princess who finds out that maybe she's a bit more human than she realised. No, I'm only joking. It's about communism, obviously. It's, name's in the title on that one. But being read by someone who maybe is a little more out of place. Let's see if you recognise this little voice.
Of the Communist Party, 1888 English version. A spectre is haunting Europe. The spectre of communism.
Of communism. That's right. Sargon of Akkad has a channel called Ancient Recitations, where he goes through and reads the entirety of things, including the Communist Manifesto. Yes, that's right. Fucking Carl, who thinks the Liberal Democrats in England, or in Britain, I suppose technically, are communists, read out the Communist Manifesto. Now, I haven't read all of this. I read all of it in the sense that I've actually read the original by the two gentlemen aforementioned. That being Marx and Engels, of course. And look at the image he's chosen as well. It's a piece of like the Soviet propaganda or whatever. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, he's written. Hang on, I've lost my fucking train of thought now. Yeah, he thinks that they're communists. I read the original by Marx and Engels, but I haven't listened to this entirety from Carl, whose real name's Carl, by the way, Sargon of Akkad. But I assume it's the real thing, right? I assume it's a faithful reading of the original. But why? Why does he do this? It's so strange. Let's see if we get the workers of the world unite. I just think it's funny for Carl to read out some communist stuff, That's just amusing to me, anyway.
Revolution. In short, the communists everywhere support every revolutionary movement against the existing social and political order of things. In all these movements, they bring to the front, as the leading question in each, the property question, no matter what its degree of development at the time.
Carl does not like the property question. I think that's safe to say.
Finally, they labour everywhere for the union and agreement of the democratic parties of all countries. The communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. They openly declare that their ends can be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions.
Oh no! Imagine Carl reading it. It's such a dispassionate God almighty. This guy gets angry at a Bernie Sanders tweet.
The ruling classes tremble at a communistic revolution. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries, unite.
That's it. No commentary, nothing. Fucking hell. Fucking hell. Whew. So I just thought I'd bring that little piece of... I don't even know what that was. That piece of gibberish, that piece of nonsense, whatever. Well, not the work itself. The fact that Carl was reading it is the nonsense. Anyway, yeah, that amused me. Someone said thank you to the person that sent me that little tidbit. That was funny. That was just Carl the Commulist. Little funny opener for you. You're very welcome, everybody. Yeah. Now that's actually interesting in a way. Because that's something that Carl has put at least a modicum of work into, because he must have actually read the book, because he literally read it out loud, so he would have read the book out loud, which I imagine is the only way he can read anything, but whatever. But also that's just an interesting look. It's off-putting. It's enormously off-putting to hear his voice saying the words, but if you didn't know anything about his politics, that's just an actually interesting historical / literary thing he's doing on YouTube. And you think, oh, that's actually something positive. For once in this man's shithouse of a life, he's actually done something vaguely positive, vaguely worthwhile. And that's nice. I mean, it doesn't make up for all the other crap, obviously, but it's something, you know? So that's a thing. It's a weird, off-putting, enormously uncomfortable thing. But it's a thing. Anyway. So, moving from one right-wing dickhead to another one. Only this time, this one's not just reading out the words of communists dispassionately, but is pretending to be a communist. Yeah. Even though they're not really. I want to introduce everyone to... you probably, if you mix in left-wing circles online, you've probably heard this name mentioned recently. A guy called Caleb Maupin. Or Maupin, or however the fuck you pronounce it. Who is an American who claims to be a communist, claims to be a socialist, claims many things, and as has been mentioned in the chat there, is not a fan of Borger King. We'll get onto it. Trust me, we'll get onto it. Now, you may have heard the name, you may not know a lot about the man. I want to introduce you to him via a speech, technically, he gave at a conference called the Alternatives to Globalism. Alternative to Globalization, sorry. Apologies. It might as well have been called Alternative to Globalism, but it's called Alternatives to Globalization, right? Now, my visual quality is not the best. Anyone who's watched any of my work will tell you. The quality of my camera work and stuff is not great, but if you're holding an international conference, even if it's a ship one like this, I'd maybe get something better than a 2001 webcam. I mean, this is grainy bullshit right here. This is really poor. Anyway, and this is from 2018. Look. Anyway, the two people we want to focus on is not this dickhead here. Don't know who he is. He looks, I'll be honest, he looks like the drawing of one of the staring championship people from Big Train. That's a reference that probably no one in the chat will get because there's no one in the chat. But whatever, that's what he looks like. And not this guy who's like Hassan Piker's long lost cousin. And not this guy who I don't even know, just old man. Anyway, we want to focus on this motherfucker here, this twat, whose name is Caleb Maupin. I mentioned him earlier. And this motherfucker, whose name is Alexander Dugin. Or Dugin, if you want to pronounce it wrong. It's Alexander Dugin. Anyway, people may have seen this motherfucker before, Dugin. He was interviewed by Lauren Southern and Brittany Pettibone. That was her maiden name then. She's now Brittany Sellner because she married an Austrian Nazi. Yeah, she's literally Eva Braun. I mean, it's amazing. Anyway, so they went to Russia. They had like a brief thing where they were going to do some journalisms. So they went to Russia, where Alexander Dugin is from, and interviewed the guy. And now he's the founder of the Nazbols, the nationalist or national Bolsheviks. Now, it's such a weird ideology. I don't even know where to begin with it. It sort of paints itself as bringing the best of fascism and the best of communism together. So it's like a Nazi and a Bolshevik, yeah, which basically means it's a Nazi because they already call themselves National Socialists. So they want to do like a kind of socialism, although not remotely actually socialistic, in one country. Sort of like Stalin. Never mind. Let's not go into it. Anyway, it's basically a way of trying to sneak bullshit fascist rhetoric and ideas into left-wing spaces, right? That's the entirety of why that exists. So they can sort of rail about like the bankers. You'll hear Caleb mention the bankers once or twice. Now, when Nazbols are talking about the bankers, they mean Jews. Let's not beat around the bush there. They mean Jewish people, and they don't just mean rich Jewish people. They don't just mean actual Jewish people who are in banking. They mean Jews, like all of the Jewish people is who they mean. Okay, because they're garbage. These people are Nazi filth. Now, Caleb Maupin claims not to be a Nazbol, even though he's sat next to Alexander Dugin, the guy who wrote a book that you'll hear Caleb reference and agree with to some extent in a second, called The Fourth Political Theory, which is setting out the kind of what the point in theory of the Nazbol is, right? It's like I say, it paints itself as being a combination of socialism and fascism, or socialism and nationalism, whatever. It's not. It's just Nazism. It's just Nazism, but they talk about like the proletariat. That's basically the deal. That's, you know, it's they're socialist in aesthetics only. Like literally, their flag is literally the Nazi flag, like the red outline with the white circle in the middle. But instead of having a swastika, they have the hammer and sickle in black. That's it. They just aesthetically inclined towards a certain kind of socialist aesthetic. That's it. Anyway, so and I said, oh, hello. I think we see a what's this? An idiot in the chat. A Juche gang. So we've got a North Korea stan in the chat. That's interesting. Let's hang on. What? Sorry, I'm just trying to click on there. They've left a message for me in chat with a link to a thing. Let's have a look. Caleb.
Need an advanced website for your business? First, go to Wix.com.
Go to Wix.com.
Your business idea needs a website, so go to Wix.com. I know what you're thinking, another Wix ad. But before you... Need a professional website?
Go away. Anyway. Caleb Maupin destroys white nationalism speaking in Russia. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I mean, you're a North Korea stan, but if he wants to destroy white nationalism, please, we'll let him do that. That's fine. We'll also watch that video. Anyway, although this is from 2017, so it's like the year before, so he may have become a nationalist since then. Anyway, whatever. But we'll take a look at that as well. Sorry, yes. Sorry, I got distracted there. You're much smarter than... Okay, stop now. Right, so, yeah, he's speaking at this conference with Alexander Dugin, Nazbol guy, which, I mean, is a bit weird if you're not a Nazbol, really. Not that you can't share a stage with people you disagree with, but I mean, it doesn't really seem to disagree with him. Let's take a look.
I only speak for myself when I'm here, but I find this moment to be somewhat pivotal for me.
Also, the word journalist there, a bit strong, really. He's a quote unquote journalist for Russia Today, which is, you know, Russian state propaganda, and I think he's been on Press TV as well, which is like Iranian state propaganda. Now, you get things like Fox News, which are like US Republican GOP state propaganda as well. And I don't respect the quote-unquote journalists on Fox either. So before anyone comes at me with the, oh, you're just being pro-West or something, that's not. I realise that a lot of media is propaganda. It's a shame, but that's But he's not really a journalist. I mean, if you believe that, he'd probably capitalise the J. Although, again, with the talk about the Jews, let's, maybe not.
To be sitting here next to Alexander Dugin. You know, the first time I heard the name Dugin, it was thrown at me as an epithet. And it was in 2014. And at that time, I was a card-carrying member of a Marxist-Leninist political party.
See, so he was aware of Alexander Dugin before. Says, he was aware that it was being used as an epithet. Okay.
And at that time, folks will recall the overthrowing of the elected government of Ukraine and the installation of a pro-Western regime. And as that was taking place, I, based on my understanding of how to understand the world and the training that I'd received as a Marxist-Leninist, it appeared to me that what was happening should be opposed, and that that the forces in the East who were resisting this regime being imposed by the West, that they should be supported. And around that time, a number of people began to denounce me in left-wing circles.
Okay, I mean, look, I'm no fan of the Ukrainian government, but I mean, are you going to mention the Russian invasion of that nation at all? Because that did happen. It's still happening. Like they're still occupying part of it.
I was called Nazbol. I was called a Strasserist, and one of the favorite epithets that people.
Strasserist is the Gregor Strasser was the quote-unquote socialist leader of the socialist faction within the actual Nazi party, like the Adolf Hitler Nazi party, who was murdered in the Night of the Long Knives because he opposed, in some sense, Hitlerism, although not really that much. And essentially, he was like the OG Nazbol, I suppose you could call him.
Began throwing at me was I was called a Duginist. And I did not know what a Duginist was. I did not know who Alexander Dugin was, so I had to look into this. I had to look it up. And around that time, I was also traveling. In 2014, I first visited the Islamic Republic of Iran. I attended a conference in Iran, and I was in Iran, and I saw in Iran a society that had broken free from Western capitalism. Their national industries were
broken free, apart from they literally run on the petrodollar. Okay. But they're broken free of Western capitalism. This man knows things.
Were under the control of the public. The oil was under the control of the public. The banking was under the control of the public. The state was working to mobilize the population to raise the living.
And again, it wasn't under the control of the Iranian public. It's the Iranian state. It's the religious oligarchy that runs Iran, not the people.
Standards. It seemed to have broken free from this free market capitalist system that we had in the West. And when I was in Iran, I remember at this conference I attended, many of the guests from around the world said to me, you've got to read the writings of Alexander Dugin. And then, oddly enough, I went to Venezuela. I was in Venezuela in 2015. And in Venezuela, this was a Marxist government. The leader was quoting, Lenin and Trotsky and such. But I noticed that there was a clear difference in the way that the activists in Venezuela.
And note, God Almighty, note how in Caleb's world, just quoting Marx and Lenin is enough, apparently. And that's almost like the perfect way of describing how fake socialism the Nazbols do, because they're basically Nazis who will occasionally quote some bits from Marx and Engels and Lenin and various other leftist thinkers from history when it suits them, and then ignore all the stuff about internationalism and all of that. Now, fuck that noise.
Were talking. They talked a lot different than the leftists in the United States talked. And when I brought this up with the Venezuelans, they said to me, "Oh, you really ought to read Alexander Dugin." And so, you know, with all of these people mentioning Dugin to me, with people accusing me of being a Duginist, I thought it would be best that I actually study the writings of Alexander Dugin. So I had to get a copy of The Fourth Political Theory, and I read the book cover to cover, and it was fascinating to me as someone who'd only really studied the political left and the ideology around it to see a wider analysis of the world. And there were many things in the book that I did agree with. The most...
See, this is what I mean. When people, I've said before, you can sit on a stage with people you disagree with. That doesn't necessarily, like, guilt by association is wrong. The point here is, he's not disagreeing with the guy. He's defending him. He's sat next to the motherfucker saying, well, I heard his name mentioned as an epithet, but actually, I read his book, and he's awesome. The fuck? You're not disagreeing with the cunt then? Like, get a grip, man.
You know, the most essential being this understanding of what liberalism is, and this understanding that there is this ideology coming out of, you know, the Western countries, the United States, Western Europe, and that seeks to put the individual above all else and break down any sense of collectivism or bond or community.
Now think for a second. Think of the fucking dog whistle involved there. When you're sat next to a fucking Nazi and you start talking about the bond of community, what does that mean exactly? Because apparently he destroys white nationalism, but sat next to a Nazi, he starts talking about the collective bond of community. Okay, I mean that's interesting.
And that this liberalism has a left-wing face and it has a right-wing face. And as I read The Fourth Political Theory, I noticed that I had been kind of aware of what he was describing in this text for a long time, because I myself, you know, I'm not from New York City, I'm not from Los Angeles, California, I'm from the heartland of the United States. I grew up in rural Ohio. You know, the town I lived in had less than 5,000 people in it. And I got attracted to left-wing ideas because I saw leaders like Fidel Castro, you know, and Kim Jong-il and others, and, you know, these are...
See, there's a difference there. There's a difference between Fidel Castro and Kim Jong-il. Fidel Castro is a complicated historical figure, but was certainly initially a pretty pure liberation hero in Cuba. Things become complicated. Running a country is. Although I'm very fond of Cuba in many respects. I'm not saying the state is perfect, and I'm not saying Fidel Castro is perfect. I've made that point upon the now late Fidel Castro's death in a video on my channel, which is probably still private on the YouTube channel because most of my videos are. It was a whole thing anyway. But Kim Jong-il was nothing. He came out of the bollocks of a liberation leader and was an authoritarian, dictatorial murderer. And I'm sure Juche Gang in the chat will be going fucking mental about that. But it's true. It's just fucking true, okay? So to compare the two and lump them all together, this is the thing. The lazy bullshit, the reductive laziness of this is frankly offensive, but whatever.
Leaders that are leading their country, they're controlling the economy and raising people up out of poverty and you know, fighting against imperialism, and that's what I was attracted to. And when I got involved in organized political leftist groups, I noticed that there was something very, very different about them. That, you know, I would get excited about, you know, Fidel Castro and seeing, you know, revolutionary armies marching in uniforms and such, and the leftists would tell me, oh no.
Revolutionary armies marching in uniforms. Again, think about this for just a second. You've got, context matters. It's not just the word you say. Because a left-wing revolutionary army is fine in its own regard, okay? I'm not making a comment on that. But if you're sat next to Mr. fucking Nazbol and you start talking about just generic revolutionary armies marching in uniform, that could describe the Nazi Party goose-stepping into power. That absolutely could. You leave that open to interpretation there. Now, he mentions it directly in reference to Fidel Castro, I understand that. But you've got to be, I think, a bit more specific with it. When you leave it open to interpretation there, I can only say that you're doing dog whistles at this point. Especially when you've sat there ostensibly agreeing with Mr. fucking Nazbol.
You know, we don't talk that way. You know, I would go to meetings and I would see people, you know, intentionally wearing clothes that were all ripped and had holes in them. And I would think, are they not professional? Do they not want to look like serious politicians?
Sorry, is there a volume problem? Sorry, someone in the chat's the same reception. I just have to adjust the volume myself. My volume's too low. Okay, vol is low. Oh, okay. I'll raise my volume then. Apologies. Sorry. Okay, is that better? Is my voice now hearable? Hopefully. It should be better anyway.
It felt very odd in left circles, and it was very strange, and I just felt like, you know, what had attracted me to the leftist ideology was very different than the people I was around.
Okay, it's cheeky, but it's a good burn. I don't know about better, but louder. Thank you. That's, I mean, I'll allow it. A good burn, it does not get you a block.
And then I began to do some reading, and I became aware of something which is, at this point, one of the programs that the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency brags about being its greatest achievement. And if you Google it, you can Google the phrase Congress for Cultural Freedom. And if you Google this...
Yeah, this is a particular bugbear of Caleb's. He likes to go on about this. Apparently the CIA funded certain cultural things, which is absolutely true. But of course the Soviet Union did the same. It's the Cold War. Like, I mean, I'm not saying either's okay or good. I'm just saying it's a thing. I don't know why you get so hung up on it like it really matters.
The first thing that will come up is the website of the U.S. CIA. And starting in 1949, there was a conference sponsored by the U.S. Communist Party and the Soviet Union in New York City at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. And it was a conference of artists and intellectuals and scientists, all of which were opposing the U.S. drive in the Cold War and were opposing U.S. imperialism. And the CIA looked at this conference and was furious about it. How could all these smart intellectuals, how could they be associated with the Soviet Union? And so...
Well, again, I mean, I can't speak to this particular conference, but what you just said there was they were opposing US imperialism. That doesn't mean they were pro-Soviet, does it? Maybe they were, I don't know.
They began a program called the Congress for Cultural Freedom, in which they sought to create a gap between Western leftist intellectuals and the Soviet Union. And they noticed that this gap already existed to some extent, and that when the Soviet Union began in the first years, it was promoting, an ultra-liberalism, homosexuality.
Hang on, whoa, sorry. There's a delightful idiot in the chat. I suggest you listen to Jason Unruh's playlist on Defend DPRK Week. Oh, yes. Jason Unruh, the obviously very, very honest actor in all of this, yeah. Like, come on, my man. Look, I'm not going to shit on the people of North Korea. I love them dearly and I want them to be free. But if you're... as tanky in chief, Jason Unruh, I'm not going to listen to what he has to say about the DPRK, because he's going to be sucking Kim Jong-un's cock. Which, I mean, look, two consenting adults want to get involved in that kind of activity, good for them. But I don't give a shit. I'm not interested in this kind of tanky circle jerking. It's not happening. I think tanky doesn't mean anything anymore. Yeah, Nazis say the same about Nazi. And you're both talking shit.
Sexuality was legalized, abortion was legal and such. But as the Soviet Union progressed, especially during the 5-year plans and the rise of Stalin, it became much more socially conservative. And many of the left-wing, cosmopolitan, middle-class intellectuals who'd been attracted to the Soviet Union, they were quite uncomfortable with what they saw as a social conservatism emerging in Soviet society.
Not just a social conservatism. That's propaganda, my friend. That's it's a lie. It's a lie by omission. Stalin sent homosexuals to the Gulag. Like this, that's not just socially conservative. That's murderous of an oppressed minority. Do you wonder why the more socially liberal people of the world started to maybe think that the Soviet Union had gone in a bad direction?
And the Central Intelligence Agency...
And again, putting gays in the Gulag is in a bad direction. I know Mr. Dugin probably doesn't think that, and Caleb Maupin certainly doesn't give a fuck, but I personally think that's evil.
This cultural gap between the Western left and the Soviet Union as something that they could utilize to make a division. And they began funding magazines. There's a Trotskyist magazine called Partisan Review, which was circulated all across the United States. And a lot of the prominent names of the American left now, Noam Chomsky, Susan Sontag, they began with this publication. Furthermore, they funded art galleries. They promoted, what they call modern art. There's people just throwing art, throwing paint onto a canvas and saying, this is art. It's progressive because it doesn't look like anything. And
right. The idea that modern art is a CIA construct is just nonsense. There's, and not just that, but what he describes as modern art wouldn't necessarily be thought of as modern art, expressionism or whatever. There is, all throughout time, including during the time he's referring to here, all kinds of different artistic forms took force. Like they all had their moments. He's just talking shit, basically.
And they did.
I just want to listen to the bit where he starts talking about Donald Trump and bankers.
All kinds of things.
Then we'll move on to another thing.
Try and influence the kind of circles where the Soviet Union and the Marxist-Leninist current had influence, and to try and pull them out of the Soviet sphere. And it's interesting, one of these intellectuals who was essentially, part of this program to divert leftism away from the Soviet Union was an individual named Susan Sontag. And in the 1980s, she was addressing a demonstration in New York City in support of the anti-Soviet uprisings in Poland. And she made a statement, and I read this statement and it really stuck with me. She said, "Communism is nothing but the most successful form of fascism." And when you read that statement, you think, what could she possibly mean? We know...
Well, considering you're sat next to Mr. Nazbol, surely he likes that, doesn't he? Surely he agrees. No? I don't know. And also, I don't know that quote isn't taken out of context. Maybe it's Soviet communism is the best, most successful form of fascism. Which would be kind of true in a way, actually. Certainly Stalinism. Yeah.
All the fascist leaders hated communism with all their heart and soul. That's what they were all about. And furthermore, all the communist leaders hated fascism with all that they were about. So what is she getting at? And the new or the modern left, if you really look at what they're about something quite different than the people who created the Soviet Union. And
yeah, because things have moved on. Things don't stay the same 100 years later, do they? This is in 2018, so over a century after the Russian Revolution. Yeah, things have progressed a little. Motherfucker, the television has happened. You can't be the same. The internet exists. You can't be exactly the same as you were 100 years ago. It doesn't work.
They're pushing quite a different agenda. And as I had been coming up as an activist and eventually going on my own ways and leaving the Marxist-Leninist group I had been a member of for almost a decade, I began to notice that all along I had been something different. When it got down to it, I was a populist. And populism in U.S. history, it's so bizarre that in every publication, the New York Times, the Foreign Affairs publication of the Council on Foreign Relations, anything in the United States, populism is the #1 enemy. It's what we're supposed to be afraid of. Populism is evil. Populism is bad. We need populism. There's Anne Marie Slaughter of the Council on Foreign Relations. She wrote an article saying the battle in the world today is the battle between the open international system, she called it, and populism. And populism is, it's Adolf Hitler, she says, it's Pinochet, but it's also Evo Morales, it's also Vladimir Putin, it's also Hugo Chavez. All of these populist regimes, they need to be replaced with the open international system, she's saying.
Well, they're not really populist in the sense. Look, populism. It's so annoying the way people misuse the phrase populism, because populism is essentially an appeal to a majority of people against a corrupt ruling elite. So you're saying, rise up with me against this cultural, against this disloyal, corrupt ruling elite, which I don't think is really possible for Vladimir Putin to claim. I don't think it's really possible that Augusto Pinochet could claim. He's dead now, though. Lol. Yeah, there are lots of those kind of like it's so annoying that Donald Trump calls himself a populist, and other people refer to him as a populist, and I have as well, just because it's become like the new definition of the word, basically, because it's ultimately usage is the final and ultimate arbiter of what a word means, right? No dictionary is accurate once it's published, because things progress, right? And when I say it's not, I don't mean it's got no worth. I mean it isn't entirely accurate anymore, because things progress in the time it takes to print a book, right? Not that anyone uses paper dictionaries anymore, but there we go. Anyway, yeah, Donald Trump. The idea of Donald Trump being a populist in what was the old, technically accurate description of populism is ridiculous. He was a billionaire. How the fuck is he not part of the corrupt ruling elite? Like the idea that he's an outsider to the establishment. Motherfucker, the woman he claimed to be the establishment, Hillary Clinton, was at one of his weddings. Like, what the fuck? Oh, it's just so annoying.
And if you read U.S. history, populism really should be a good thing. I mean, there's a long history of populism in American history. Coming out of the Civil War and the struggle to abolish slavery, there was a populist...
Yep, so it's the person in the chat that says Trump positioned himself in that way. That's true, he did. He said, like, oh, drain the swamp. Yeah, of course. But he was the swamp. And everyone should have been able to see that. And they didn't, which is really fucking annoying. But anyway.
Party. And as the Republican Party moved into being more of a capitalist and a free market party, the mass movement of small farmers and radicals who had fought for the abolition of slavery in the United States, they formed the Populist Party, and they called for the nationalization of the railroads, and they called for the redistribution of land, the fight against the big monopolies, and they fought for an interpretation of Christianity that would favor the downtrodden and the poor, and not favor greed and the rich, as was being promoted by some of the big denominations in the United States. And populism was being portrayed as a bad thing. We have individuals like Huey Long. Huey Long was the governor of Louisiana, the state in the United States during the 1930s, and he is, if you go to Louisiana, he is loved. Almost, so many bridges are named after him. There are monuments to Huey Long everywhere, and anyone who was alive during the time of Huey Long's governorship in the 1930s would tell you he was the most popular governor they ever had. And he was considered a populist, and he redistributed. He taxed the oil money, and he used it to feed people and care for people. But yet Huey Long, on a national scale, outside of Louisiana, where he actually had his power, is one of the most demonized figures in U.S. history. There's been fictionalized films, All the King's Men and such, and we hear, in our school textbooks, we learned that Huey Long was the dictator of Louisiana. But you go to Louisiana, everyone remembers him as being the greatest governor they ever had. They wouldn't have roads, they wouldn't have bridges, they wouldn't even have school textbooks if it weren't for Huey Long, the man who laid the foundation. So populism, it's been widely distorted, and the way you read it in the United States, it's almost as if to be a populist is the equivalent of being a Ku Klux Klansman. That's what we're told. If you're a populist, you want to dangle African Americans from trees and kill them, and that's just not the reality of what populism is. But because any notion of populism has really been abandoned by the left, we're starting to see this demonization of populism in all circles. In the United States, there is a real confusion about how to move forward, and the organized political left is kind of at a loss. A lot of the constituency in organized political left is...
Sorry, what does the spinning... apologies, I'm relatively new to the whole Twitch thing. What does the spinning triangle cheer 50 mean? What is that? That's a new thing I haven't seen before. Made a comment about on intervention. What's this? Just because there is oil in the area of operations doesn't mean a humanitarian unitarian goal could not be accomplished in the US executed those operations. It would be more accountable, should be enacted, but not the humanitarian mission would be irrelevant. Well, yeah, I mean, in theory it would be fine. I think you got 50 cents. Oh, okay. Oh, well, thank you for 50 cents. Yes. I'll use it to party like it's my birthday. Gonna sip Bacardi like it's my... That's a 50-cent song. Sorry.
Groups is very generational. It's been in their family for years. You know, their parents came to the United States in the 1920s or 30s, and they were members of the Communist Party. Then their children, grew up to be the 1960s New Left and opposed the Vietnam War and burned their draft cards. And now their children are Antifa and anarchists and breaking the windows of banks and
yeah, he doesn't like Antifa, even though they're one of the only forces stopping Nazism. Strange. And
attacking people and such. And that demographic in the United States is dying. Most of the individuals in that demographic no longer call themselves left. And this kind of urban, cosmopolitan, middle-class grouping that defined leftism in U.S. history is vanishing. However, there are many people in the United States who are opposed to capitalism. And, during the presidential election, I'm a leftist, I come out of a left background, but I saw Donald Trump speak, and there were many times that he spoke, and I applauded. I heard him talk about how, there's this elite that is not loyal to the United States, these international bankers.
There's an elite that's not loyal to the United States, which, by the way, has been echoed in Trump's words when he was talking about Israeli citizens, wasn't it? No, it wasn't Trump's words. Who said it? Was it Steve Bannon? I can't remember. People who were dual American and Israeli citizens. So basically, they're talking about Jews. That's what's being referred to. When he says bankers, he means the Jews. And he sat next to the fucking NazBol guy. I don't know how else you can interpret that.
I applauded when he said that. When he talked about how, in Syria, or in Iraq and all these countries, we have attacked them, and the result has been terrorism getting stronger, and that the U.S. population is gaining nothing from these wars. I applauded when he said that.
Yeah, and you were taken in by an idiot. He's done more drone strikes than even Obama did. You fucking moron.
Now, I didn't agree with Trump about certain issues like immigration, certain issues like empowering the policing agencies in the United States, but in many ways, Trump was better than Hillary Clinton when it came to the concerns that are important to me.
Like taking on the Jews? Yeah. Like I'm sorry, Caleb, you're an idiot, mate. You're a fucking idiot. Anyway, so we'll leave that there because the rest of he rambles on about nonsense. I just want to point out, right, now, the size of a YouTube channel is irrelevant to me. I don't give a fuck how big you are or how small you are, but I want to note Caleb Maupin has 11,800 subscribers, which is less than I have, and I'm nobody, right? But I just want to take you on too for a second. Look, I just want to show you.
If you are one of
right, that's his intro video, right? It's called "Who is Caleb Maupin?" An animated intro, which is this video here, right? I just wanted to show you. This is the video he puts has his intro. It's the thing you go on. You first go onto his channel. That's the one you see. By the way, I like the much younger picture he's using there. Doesn't matter. Anyway, because this is one of the most self-aggrandizing pieces of gibberish. This is funny. Sorry. Right. So who the fuck is Caleb fucking Maupin? An animated fucking intro.
If you are one of the many people getting interested in socialism and world politics these days, you've probably heard of Caleb Maupin. So, who is Caleb Maupin? A journalist, political analyst, TV personality.
Sorry, I can send you links if you want, but Trump has significantly increased the number of drone strikes that were being used than during the Obama administration. Now, the overall number might not be as many at the moment because he's been in power for like 3 years and Obama was in power for 8 years. But I'm saying like per year of his presidency, he's significantly increased the number of drone strikes being used. Yes, that's just true. No, he doesn't just mean the IMF and the World Bank. He's talking about Jews. You know he's talking about Jews. Don't talk shit to me, Duce gang.
And author. Caleb is a 21st
Sorry, I was reading the chat. We need to go back, right?
If you are one of the many people getting interested in socialism and world politics these days, you've probably heard of Caleb Maupin.
No, you haven't. No one said of Caleb Maupin. I'm sorry. Like, again, you've got 11,000 subscribers, my dude. You definitely have never, ever heard of Caleb Maupin. That's fine. Not a problem. But don't say, like, you've probably heard of Caleb Maupin. He's kind of a big deal, yo.
So, who is Caleb Maupin?
No one.
A journalist, political
really.
analyst, TV personality, and author. Caleb is a 21st century socialist and advocate of international friendship.
Is he a 21st century one, though? Because he's basically decrying that we're not exactly like Lenin, who died 100 years ago. Well, nearly 98 years, whatever. Like, come on.
And cooperation. He first rose to prominence through socialist organizing in Cleveland, Ohio. In 2010, Caleb attended a student walkout protesting teacher layoffs and filmed an instance of police brutality.
This is an amazing thing. Now, I don't know what he's talking about. Was it two black cops on two black women? I don't know. But also, look at the smile on his face. Like, dude, the animation, just change it, because that looks really fucking creepy, the way it's been done like that.
Against two African-American high school students. The introduction of his video footage as evidence in juvenile court resulted in a verdict of not guilty for one of the two young women. Cleveland Scene magazine describes Caleb at the time. The 22-year-old is chatty and affable. When it comes to talking politics,
That's it. Chatty and affable. I mean, that's fine, don't get me wrong, but it's not like a ringing endorsement. It's not like this man has the greatest grasp of current political affairs on the planet. You should really like this guy. Like, it's nothing, really.
Obviously done his homework. Facts, dates, obscure legislation, the fates of forgotten labor leaders, snippets of protest songs. In part, he's learned
Snippets of protest songs. There you go. That's all you need to be a leftist.
The game as a careful student of history, but he also sees himself as an inheritor of the radical tradition. In 2011, when the Occupy Wall Street movement took root in New York City, Caleb was at the center of the action. At the first General Assembly, he gave a fiery speech built around the phrase and idea of class against class. He also urged the Occupy movement to take a stand against the bombing of Libya.
Which is, I mean, that's fine, by the way, but I just want to point out, why's he got an Amish beard? It's just weird. And again, he's sort of bigging himself up at the forefront of the... Like, maybe he did give a speech
against the bombing of Libya, at a time when most leftists weren't even aware of it. After Occupy, Caleb decided it was time to get a haircut and start traveling.
More professional haircut.
Soon he was speaking at important conferences in Iran, Ecuador, Venezuela, Brazil, and Russia.
Yeah, we just saw one of them. That was not an important conference.
In 2013, he led the Hands Off Syria protests, demanding the end of American efforts to...
When you say he led, what does that mean exactly? Because again, you're kind of bigging yourself up here. Like, this is... it's nonsense.
Overthrow the Syrian government.
By the way, I'm not like a fan of Western intervention at all. I'm just saying, like, is the idea of him being the leader of anything? I don't think so.
Appearing on CNN, Caleb urged President Obama himself not to launch a new war. In 2015, Caleb...
Yeah, do you think Obama was watching? Probably. I imagine he was. Yeah. Must have been.
Was invited to join with the Red Crescent Society of Iran, delivering medical supplies to war-torn Yemen. The rescue ship created an international incident, and Saudi Arabia bombed the port of Hodeidah.
Fucking hell! That animation. Can we just see that again? It's look. This is too cutesy an art style for the thing you're depicting here. Look at this
Saudi
explosion.
Arabia bombed the port
And
of
they're just on the floor.
Hodeidah 8 times in a single day
Fucking
to
hell!
keep Caleb and the small group of medical volunteers from arriving. Since that time, Caleb's writing has been translated into a number of languages. He's been featured and quoted on China.org, Forbes, The Nation, Democracy Now!, and many other outlets. He works as a reporter for the International Television Network, RT. And
no, he's a Russian propaganda mouthpiece. What they need is American accents to give Russian propaganda so that Americans might listen. That's what he is. He's Vladimir Putin's cocksock. Okay?
and his work is viewed by millions every day. Caleb never turns down an opportunity to debate in favor of socialism, whether against liberals, conservatives, fascists, or anarchists. Caleb Maupin is a Marxist, anti-racist, and feminist.
I don't know that he's anti-racist. He might be a feminist, I have no idea.
He opposes all forms of oppression, but he's also
We'll see about that in just a second.
a Christian and a patriotic American. He remains critical of the pessimism and destructiveness found in some leftist circles.
Gotta get that little jibe in. Trotskyists!
And urges the American left to rediscover the traditions of class struggle and anti-imperialism.
Why is that? Hang on, what's that depicting? Did he have a talk show? Or I don't know what this is supposed to be. This is just weird.
To rediscover the traditions of class struggle and anti-imperialism. Caleb's book.
Oh yeah, because the American left is never mentioning imperialism. Ever. Not a thing.
City Builders and Vandals in Our Age has been described as a groundbreaking analysis of capitalism and geopolitics.
Like
He's now in the
Caleb's
process
mom.
of forming a think tank called the Center for Political Innovation that aims to expand the conversation about how the USA can get past the crisis of greed, wars, and market-spawned chaos. The slogan and message that Caleb wants to popularize is, "We need a government
Death to the Jews. Probably, I imagine. No?
of action to fight for working families." If this sounds interesting to you, do yourself a favor. Subscribe to this channel and start engaging with what Caleb Maupin has to say.
I
He's
am.
got a unique socialist
I'm already engaging with the nonsense that Caleb Maupin has to say. It's literally happening right now.
perspective formed by real-life experiences in the class struggle. Check out his
Class
website,
struggle? What are you talking
calebmaupin.com, and stay in touch with him on Facebook and Twitter.
No, fuck off. No. Caleb Maupin. I won't be subscribing. I think that's fair to say. Yes. So, if you've heard of Caleb Maupin recently, it's probably because of this video and the drama surrounding it. This Caleb Maupin is an idiot. No doubt about it. And he made a response to a video put out by Thought Slime, who's a very good YouTuber, and does some stuff here on Twitch apparently as well. You should definitely go and subscribe to them. They've got like a much bigger channel than me and Caleb put together, because you know we're nobodies. But Thought Slime is very, very good. You should go and subscribe to them. But Thought Slime's an anarchist. Oh yeah. And made some criticisms of a transphobic interview that Caleb did with a compatriot of mine, a certain Jyoti Brar, who's a member of the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist, an organisation I attempted to join when I was 15, but because I was 15 I didn't have a bank account, and you needed to like send a cheque to them for like, I don't know, however much the joining fee was, like £5 or something back in the day. And my dad said, "No, you're not." I'm not. My dad is a leftist as well, but he was like, "No, and you trust me, you will thank me for this in later years. I'm not going to sign that check." So I never ended up joining in the end, and I did thank him years later because that organisation is dog shit. Anyway, but yeah, anyway, so that interview happened. Thought Slime responded by saying, "Maybe don't do transphobia. It's not very like." It's not very leftist of you, don't do that. And Caleb put together what I think is the most stupid response, the most smooth-brained fucking nonsense ever. So we're going to take a look. Actually, okay, we'll do that in a second. I did say we'd take a look at this Caleb Maupin destroying white nationalism bit. I did say that from the chat. I don't usually take things from the chat, but okay. We'll have a look at this first.
think of your most passionate and
so she can translate, so slower. So she translate his question if you can.
Я могу сказать сразу по-русски, да?
Oh.
But I'm gonna say it in English because I want to specifically to understand my question.
Yeah.
Right now, the population, the demographics of white population in the world is declining very fast. In the 1950s, it was about 25-30%. By 2000, in 100 years, maybe less than 10%. The white people are dying out. What do you think stops unification of Christian white nations like Canada, Europe, Russia, and USA to create a union and support creation of other unions like Arabic Union, African Union, to stop the wars completely? And each union would have their own currencies, culture, and everything, and it will stop migration.
Well, the European Union already exists, but white nationalists don't tend to like it. Strange.
Why do you think white people are so against each other?
Oh.
Thank you.
Sure.
My name is Pavel Yakovlev, I'm an independent nuclear researcher, journalist. Да, вот у меня такой вопрос. В 1950 году население, белое население планеты было около 30-50%, я вот не уверен, но так. К 2010 году эта цифра может снизиться ниже 50%. Продолжается вражда белых людей друг с другом. Это все страны, христианские страны. Что, почему мы не можем все объединиться, что нас останавливает создать наш общий союз и перестать вести агрессивные, создать проблемы другим странам, помочь другим региональным этническим блокам также создать такие союзы, как Африканский союз, Арабский союз и другие блоки. Если мы будем продолжать вот так вот делать гадости и пакости друг другу, мы просто сделаем журналист.
Позвольте мне сказать следующее.
I don't just want the white people of the world to get along with each other.
Я не просто хочу, чтобы белое население друг с другом жило в мире.
I want the people of all races in the world to get along with each other.
Я хочу, чтобы все люди всех рас жили в мире друг с другом.
Perhaps the reason you're asking this question, though.
Возможно, причина, по которой вы задаете этот вопрос сейчас.
The translation is insufferable. I mean, I know that they're in Russia or whatever, right? So they need to translate, but it's just...
As there's been a rise of figures in the USA that they call white nationalists.
Так это то, что сейчас в США появляются белые националисты.
I don't agree with these people.
Я с этими людьми не согласен.
If you study sociology and anthropology,
если вы изучаете социологию, антропологию,
there's a very clear definition of what a nation is.
Вы тогда знаете, что есть очень четкое определение слова нация, понятия нация.
A nation is a people with a common culture.
Нация — это люди с общей культурой.
A common history.
Общей историей.
A common territory.
Общей территорией.
Common language.
Языком.
And white Americans
И белые американцы
are not a nation.
Они не являются нацией.
The only thing we have in common
Все, что у нас есть общего,
is the color of our skin.
это цвет нашей кожи.
Some of us are from Ireland, like my ancestors.
Некоторые из нас происходят из Ирландии, например, как мои предки.
Some of our ancestors come from this part of the world.
А некоторые из этой части света.
Some of our ancestors come from France.
Некоторые предки из Франции.
Some immigrated in the 1700s.
Некоторые эмигрировали в 18 столетии.
Some in the 1800s.
Некоторые в 19-м.
Some in the 1900s.
Некоторые еще позже.
Some more recently.
Некоторые совсем недавно.
There are white Americans who do not speak English.
Есть белокожие американцы, которые не говорят по-английски.
There are whole neighborhoods. There's a neighborhood in Detroit called Hamtramck.
Есть в Детройте особое сообщество,
where the white Americans
где белые американцы
still speak Polish.
До сих пор говорят по-польски.
But they're
That's true, and there are parts of Pennsylvania that speak German as well.
treated as white Americans.
Но к ним относятся как к белым американцам.
There are white Americans who are Catholic.
Есть те, кто являются католиками.
There are white Americans who are Protestant.
Есть протестанты.
There are white Americans who are Orthodox Christians, like you have here.
Есть христиане, ортодоксальные христиане, как здесь русские люди.
There are white American atheists, Buddhists.
Есть буддисты, есть приверженцы разных религий.
There's no bond that ties white Americans together.
И нет какой-то крепкой связи.
They don't constitute a nation.
Мы не являемся нацией.
So, in my personal view,
Так, по моим личным соображениям,
only representing myself, of course,
я сейчас, конечно, только от себя говорю.
I think white nationalism is a false concept.
Мне кажется, что...
No, that's true. I mean, you should probably be a bit more forceful because you're basically talking to kind of Nazi Well, I mean, he could be playing devil's advocate, but it sounded like a Nazi question to me.
Белый labeling is nationalist. It's your incorrect journalist style. It's not nationalist. Okay.
Что белый национализм – это ложная концепция.
Это не белый национализм. It's wrong labeling. It has nothing to do with nationalism. Nothing. It's wrong, incorrect political labeling of your opposition view.
That destroys white nationalism. I mean, don't get me wrong, he made some good points there. There's definitely true that white Americans aren't a nation from any historical anthropological point of view, and the same can be extrapolated to the peoples of Europe, and between the peoples of Europe and the peoples of America and Russia and fucking anywhere, Australia, New Zealand, whatever. But that's not destroying white nationalism, because at no point did he say that's hateful bullshit. At no point did he say, oh yeah, fuck you. Like, point out, saying I don't agree with that doesn't equal destroy. Exactly, it doesn't, no. And I'm glad he made the points. I think that's good. I think it's good that people heard that at the thing. That's grand. But, yeah, that's not destruction on any realistic level whatsoever. But whatever. Look, that's okay, cool, good stuff.
Dreamed I saw Joey here last night, alive as you and me.
I hate that Caleb Maupin abuses Paul Robeson in this way. Paul Robeson's a fucking hero. Anyway.
Says I, but Joel, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he.
People are covered with mud. You can't tell if they're wearing clothes or what. What's your name?
Jessica!
Jessica, did you mean to get this money?
No, they threw me in.
Did you get dragged in the mud?
No, I want Dick.
Hey.
So the point of that opening is really strange. Is he saying that things in the past were brilliant and now they're shit? Is that the point? That in 1949 we have Paul Robeson singing to working class people, and I think that was the thing he did with the Welsh miners or Scottish miners. Anyway, and now it's like, oh, it's just people being in the mud. Is that the point he's making? Because that's weird. Because that's almost like the kind of Nazi thing about embrace tradition, reject modernity, which is what Nazis fucking do. That's literally their slogan, isn't it?
Folks.
Anyway, yeah. So I did the preamble and then did the weird destruction of white nationalism. Which one destruction? But anyway, yeah. So the transphobia. Well, this is the thing where he responds to Thoughtslime's response to some transphobic British communist woman. He kind of outlines it anyway, but yeah. Exactly, those degenerates and their mud. They're well known for it. I make the joke when right wingers talk about degenerates, I call them communists, as like a joke, right? So what would a communist, or at least in theory he's a communist, Caleb Maupin referred to them as? I don't know. Jews? No, sorry, not Jews. International bankers. Yeah.
So it's recently come to my attention that a certain internet pseudo-leftist personality who calls himself Thoughtslime has decided to target Jyoti Brar, a prominent communist leader, and myself.
She's not really prominent in any actual respect at all. But okay. Fine.
The reason he's decided to go after us is because he disapproves of something that Jyoti Brar said in an interview I did with her 9 months ago.
Material analysis is good for a lot of things. It can help you build a bridge or manage an economy. It can't tell you whether a poem is good. I'm not saying you're a bad person or a bad leftist, necessarily.
Sure.
Before you see Nazbol ghoul Caleb Maupin talking to Jyoti Brar.
I like that you left that burn in. Nazbol ghoul. And he just left it in. They're like, that's okay, cool.
Of the Communist Party of Great Britain. And what she's saying sucks.
Now, this is not the first time that someone has tried to paint me as a bigot who advocates further oppression of the transgender community.
Why is that, do you think, Caleb? Like, why do you think it is that people may have considered you that in the past and referred to you as a transphobe. Because surely, if it's a repeated pattern that people are accusing you of a thing, maybe look inward rather than just, exploding outward. Look inward for why that might be. Maybe your approach to things, because he's going to claim he's not a transphobe, okay? Maybe if you're giving the impression of you being a transphobe, it's something about your approach to the subject and the subject matter that's leading people to that conclusion. So, yeah. By the way, I think he's a transphobe. I'm just saying, whatevs.
However, I've always given a pretty clear answer when directly asked about the issue. Take a listen to what happened when Vosh tried to gotcha me and paint me as a transphobe in our recent debate about tankies and their role in the left.
How do you feel about transgender people, if I might ask?
Oh yeah, sorry, the point of check is made. In the initial video, Thoughtslime didn't say that Caleb was a transphobe. So again, he's kind of projecting there, but whatever.
I think the way that they're treated is awful. Bullying.
He's projecting the idea of being called a transphobe in this scenario because he wasn't being called that. Whatever.
Hate crimes. It's despicable. The way people, have been separated from their families, kicked out of their households. I feel nothing but empathy for people that are transgender and face all the hate and discrimination on that basis.
But you agree that gender reassignment surgery is a valid way of addressing their, gender dysphoria in many cases.
If an adult chooses to do that, that's their business. It has nothing to do with me.
Okay, well.
Hate crimes, discrimination, bullying is something that any progressive would oppose. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. What about China?
The thing is...
See, that's not a gotcha, Caleb. My dear sweet summer child, to steal the Thoughtslime line. That's not a gotcha. Vosh, for all of his faults, and I have been nothing if not forthright in my opining on the faults that I have with Vosh in the past. Vosh there asks you a question, accepts the answer, and moves on to a different topic. That's not a gotcha. On any... what conceivable fucking paradigm, in what conceivable world is that a gotcha? That's just... It's just discussion. It's just Vosh saying a thing. Vosh? However you pronounce the twat's name. That was unnecessarily harsh. This is not a stream about him. Anyway, yeah, that was him just engaging in perfectly good faith discussion. Like, it's ridiculous. Is this live? This is live, KJ. I am technically still alive. Although I'm sure the Rona's coming for me, but this is live right now. Yes. Hello. Anyway, yeah. So that wasn't a gotcha, Caleb. Like it's I suppose in a way it's slightly apposite that he's essentially a kind of Nazi or Nazbol or whatever the fuck, because a lot of Nazi ideology is built around the idea of essentially wanting to be oppressed, or wanting that feeling of oppression so that the violence you wish to enact upon the people you think are oppressing you is justified. That he's now, the two people he's responding to here, firstly Thoughtslime and secondly Vosh, have not done the thing he's claimed of them. Thoughtslime did not refer to him as a transphobe in the video he's responding to. They then later did, in a response to this response, claim that he's probably a transphobe, but too cowardly to say it. But in the video he's responding to, they did not refer to them as did not refer to Caleb as a transphobe. And Vosh didn't do a gotcha. You're not oppressed here. You're not being even really attacked here at all. The response was to Jyoti Bra. But anyway.
I've always understood the transgender issue to be an issue of human rights. Transgender people are victims of hate crimes, very frequently by bigots who somehow feel threatened by their very existence. Transgender people have difficulty finding jobs because of discrimination in employment. Transgender people often face being kicked out of their households because their families reject them and don't accept them. And I have always opposed this. My orientation has always been that this kind of discrimination, this kind of castigation and oppression of one section of the working class hurts all working people and should be opposed by progressive forces.
See, that's good in a way, although actually I can see why the animation had the Amish beard thing going on, because that's wow. We've all, I mean, to be fair, I shouldn't criticise, we've all got photos from the past where we look a little bit, we look back on them and think to ourselves, maybe that wasn't the greatest stylistic choice, but you know what, it was popular at the time, I was trying a new thing, let's move on. Anyway, so, yeah, he mentions the sectioning off of certain parts of the working class. Now, that's a good point to make, Caleb, but what you should have been doing in the initial interview with Jyoti Brar is making that exact point to her. That what she is doing, by being a transphobic piece of garbage, is sectioning off trans people who are predominantly of a lower socioeconomic status because of the aforementioned oppression that you mentioned there about finding it more difficult to find employment and accommodation and access to medical procedures and stuff, and the fact that in countries like America they have to pay for the surgery or the hormone treatment and all the rest of it. So there's lots of ways in which they're bumped down the socioeconomic state ladder, and so they're more likely to, even if they weren't necessarily born into a working class lifestyle, although many of them were of course as well, a lot of them are now at the bottom rungs of the socioeconomic ladder and therefore are part of the proletariat for which left-wing people should be fighting, right? So what you should have been doing is saying that you shouldn't be sectioning off that part of the working class and being shitty to them because you're a transphobic arsehole. You should have been saying that to Jyoti Brar. Because if you had said that, it's not that Thoughtsline wouldn't have made a response video, but I think probably would have given you some props for responding and saying, actually, Jyoti, that's a really disgusting thing to say. Don't fucking say that. That's a really horrible thing to say about a section of people who, by the way, if trans people give up on the left, there are lots of leftist groups and lots of leftist circles which will fucking die, okay? There are lots of trans people who are communists, who are anarchists, because they see fundamentally that the society is not structured around things that are important to them, and that the society as it's currently constructed is shit, which drives them into the arms of groups that want to change the fundamental structures of society, i.e. like anarchists, socialists, communists, those kinds of groups. So maybe don't shit on like a core part of what is modern leftism as well. So from a human rights point of view, from a not being a shitty person point of view, and from a purely Machiavellian political point of view, it's not a good idea to be shitting on trans people. Maybe you should have told that to Jyoti Brar. Just a thought.
Now, not only have I always taken this position, but I've been quite active around it. Before I was a journalist, when I was an activist, on many occasions I took to the streets of New York City to march for trans rights.
Yeah, don't worry, Jyoti Brar is the leader of, one of the leaders of the British Communist Party. The clips that he plays in the video are from that interview, so you'll see the person in question, okay?
In New York City, the NYPD, the police department...
That was me responding to someone in the chat, if you're watching back later. Sorry.
...department here actually had a policy of profiling transgender women and stopping and frisking them, and some cases often arresting them unjustly on charges of prostitution. And I was involved in many protests around that issue. And
firstly, the interview the speech you seem to be giving there, the one sign that is actually visible says stop racial profiling. It doesn't say stop transphobic profiling. Now, that's a good thing to campaign against racial profiling. Absolutely. I'm with you and the people there in campaigning against that. But that's not the thing you're talking about. So the fact that you've shown this image here suggests to me that you might be talking shit when it comes to campaigning against that particular thing. Or at least you want to give the appearance that this is a thing about transgender profiling, which is wrong, because that's not what this is. Clearly, this is a thing against racial profiling. Now, again, you make a good point though that the profiling of trans people is terrible. Absolutely. Whether being done though by the police in the instance you mentioned, or by anyone, frankly. And what Jyoti Brar is advocating for leads to the profiling of trans people. Most sort of high profile of which at the moment is like the idea of essentially profiling them when they want to go and take a piss and or shit, or just wash their hands, whatever, right? They want to go to the toilet in a public place. They want to go into the toilet that is their actual fucking gender. So they do. And because they're trans, and therefore they're like a male, quote unquote, a male trying to get into a female space, Jyoti Brar wants to do like, I don't know, a dick check at the door or something? Like, I don't know exactly, but that's the ultimate public policy outcome of that kind of thinking. So what you're actually doing by not pushing back against Jyoti Brar, which is precisely what you did in that interview, by the way, is just nod along like a fucking twat. You're essentially allowing that kind of abusive behaviour towards trans people to be more widespread than just the police doing it, which is a more obvious thing which people generally will be against. What you're doing is backing up the profiling of trans people by random transphobes. Trying to check, like I say, doing a dick check because the trans person wants to take a shit? What the fuck?
On charges of prostitution. And I was involved in many protests around that issue and around the fact that the New York City Police Department was targeting the transgender community. Furthermore, here you can see me with Mariela Castro, an individual who's been very key in reforming the way the Cuban government treats LGBT people, gay and lesbian and transgender people. I had the opportunity of being involved in planning a reception for her when she came to New York City.
That's cool. Yeah. Although again, oh god, he's literally wearing a fedora. We've all, like, again though, we've all got those pictures from our past where you're like, wow, that was a bad choice, man. Fuck. Oh, what do I look like? Oof, terrible. And the thing is, how you look now, you'll look back in 10 years and think, wow, I didn't look great. The rich tapestry of life.
I have always viewed the oppression of transgender people as an issue of human rights. Now, you'll notice that the clip which this thought slime individual objected to was not about whether transgender people should be beaten up and killed. It wasn't about whether they should face discrimination in hiring. It wasn't about whether their families should reject them. It wasn't about any of that. It was about transgender ideology.
Now, this is one of the most annoying and frankly insidious parts of this, right? Firstly, just because you don't advocate for the beating up and murder of trans people does not mean you're a trans ally. It just means you're not a psychopath. Okay? That's great. Or not a sociopath. Although, not necessarily. Anyway, let's not get into armchair psychologism. Jism. Anyway, my mind goes down weird sidetracks. Now, so just because you're not advocating for the murder of trans people doesn't mean you're not. Doesn't mean you are a trans ally, okay, Caleb? Like, that's ridiculous. Even hardcore fucking turf garbage bags don't literally say, I'm against the fucking human rights of trans people. By and large. I mean, there might be some nutters online, who knows. Mumsnet is a crazy fucking place. But they'll try and couch it in language of, well, we're just trying to protect women, blah, blah, blah. And they're not, they're just transphobic scum. But that's the way they try and do it, okay? So on that basis, if you're saying you can only be called a transphobe if you advocate for physical violence against trans people, then no one's a transphobe, basically, or very few, outside of maybe Nazis or something like that. Maybe Alexander Dugin, who knows? Yeah, so basically you render the term meaningless. which I know suits you because as you are probably transphobic as fuck, although you're too spineless to just come out and say it, that suits your agenda, because you don't want people to call you a transphobe, because that's obviously not something that's generally viewed as a positive thing, certainly not on the left. Although again, whether you're actually on the left is debatable at times. And it allows Jyoti Brar, though, because she's not advocating for violence against trans people either. Obviously, because again, I don't think she's a psychopath. I think she's just a transphobe. Not that those two things are necessarily mutually exclusive, but you know, you get the point I'm trying to make there. But she's clearly transphobic as fuck, right? So just because she's not advocating for violence doesn't mean anything. And the point is, when you boil it down to its transgender ideology, what you're fundamentally saying is that you don't view trans people as the gender that they are. Okay? You're saying that a trans person is their assigned at birth gender. You don't see trans women as women, or trans men as men, or non-binary people as anything, frankly. Which is fundamentally transphobic as shit. Which is why I think you are a transphobe. But like I say, I'm too much of a coward to just fucking say it. Like, at least if Jyoti Brar, or Jyoti Brar, whatever, however you pronounce it, sort of owns her shit to some extent, and just comes out and says, like, oh yeah, trans people aren't a thing. Like, it's not dialectical, which is not fucking true, but whatever. And yeah, so to call it ideology suggests that they're trying to kind of indoctrinate people into believing a thing which isn't true, which itself isn't true. Caleb, you fucking dipshit. That's the thing that people are offended about. The thing that Jyoti said, which was that it's ideology, that trans people don't really exist as the gender that they are. They're just trying to, through ideology, tell you that they're a different gender to try and force you to have to agree with this thing, which is the fundamentally transphobic thing that Jyoti said, which is bollocks. So, like, I don't know how you think that's in any way a refutation of accusations of transphobia that have come your way from other people who, again, aren't Thoughtsline, because the video you're responding to, they didn't say that in the video. Anyway.
And honestly, I do not know enough about this topic. I am not well informed enough about the issue of transgender ideology to make a comment on it. So I let Jyoti Brar.
Again, just for the person in the chat, that demonstration wasn't of a trans thing. It was against black profiling of black people. Now, that's not to say he hasn't also been on those marches, but that picture wasn't of the thing he was claiming it was. Which, again, does not endear me to want to believe the thing he's saying. But there we go.
A prominent British communist who I respect deeply, give her opinion. And this thought slime objects to her opinion. The thing is, I don't view the transgender issue as an abstract ideological question. I view it as an issue of human rights and an issue of affecting people's lives. And this is starting to point to the real difference between me and this thought slime individual and a lot of people that are out to malign and slander legitimate anti-imperialists, Marxists, and activists.
They're not out to do that. They're out to call out transphobia. Thought slime themselves is an anti-imperialist, an activist. I don't know that they're necessarily a Marxist. I don't know if they describe themselves in that way. But they're certainly anti-imperialist. I'm anti-imperialist as well. I'm here to call out transphobia. From, you know, Jyoti Brar, you, Alexander Dugin, Nazis, whatever.
The likes of Mr. Thought Slime try to portray it as if you must be a supporter of imperialism if you are to advocate against the oppression of transgender people.
Literally, at what point is that? Because in the video, you idiot, Thought Slime literally says that anti-imperialism is a part of the general struggle to tear down the system that includes transphobia as a part of it. That's literally a point that they literally make in the video to which you are responding. You don't show that bit though, because again, this isn't like a good faith attempt to try and respond to criticism. This is just you throwing a bitch fit, a BF, if you will, for people who watched the fucking craziest shit review we did of the film White Chicks on the Happy Hour on YouTube on, was it Monday or whatever? Yeah. This is just you having a little moan on the internet rather than you responding to actual criticisms made of you, which is, you know, pathetic.
And furthermore, all who defend anti-imperialist and existing socialist states are somehow advocates of harming transgender people.
Not true, again. Saying that there are people who are, let's be honest, he's talking about tankies. Just because there are tankies who are transphobes does not mean they're all transphobes. And again, the point was never made by Thoughtslime, or Vosh for that matter, that Vosh. I keep saying it wrong. I say it like a British person, I say it correctly, but apparently it's not pronounced that way. Anyway, neither of those people made the claim that all tankies or all people who, you can always tell a tanky because they refer to it as actually existing socialism or whatever, actually existing socialist states, which don't actually exist for the most part anymore. But some, I mean, they claim that, like, he goes on about anti-imperialist states and then is a stand for China, which is an imperialist state doing imperialism right now and engaging in a genocide against the Uyghur Muslims as well, which is depressing as fuck. But there we go. So no, at no point did Thoughtslime say that. You're just lying, Caleb.
That is a huge, huge misconception. Who was the first prominent transgender activist?
Sorry. Okay. Thoughtslime's pronouns are he, him. Okay. Apologies. When I'm not sure, I just go with they. Because because the only people who would be actually offended if I call them they, but their pronouns are either he, him, or she, her. The only people who would be annoyed by being called them are people who deserve to be annoyed by that because they're transphobic arseholes generally. But yeah, I'll go with he, him then. Apologies.
In U.S. history, it was Leslie Feinberg.
Because I know that they're like the non-binary or intersex or whatever. Not intersex, sorry. What's it called? Non-binary. Yeah, non-binary. Yeah, that's the phrase. So I already said the word and then I couldn't remember the word. I am a smart man. Anyway.
Leslie Feinberg was a leader of the Workers' World Party, and Leslie Feinberg was a tanky. She was a defender of Cuba, a defender of North Korea, a defender of the Soviet Union and China. She spoke in defense of the Islamic Republic of Iran. She spoke in defense of many governments around the world, and she viewed the transgender struggle as a struggle that was involved with tearing down U.S. imperialism.
Now that's fine. I don't really know this Leslie Feinberg person. But just because there was a prominent transgender person who was an anti-imperialist doesn't refute anything. Like I don't want to remotely shit on Leslie and her advocacy in the past. That's fine. But it's irrelevant. I want to kind of remove her from the conversation because it's not relevant at all to anything that's being said here. And like I say, Thoughtslime literally said that tearing down imperialism and settler colonialism and capitalism and all of that sort of stuff was intrinsically a part of their pro-transgender people, pro-trans ideology. That those things were interconnected. That's literally what they said in the video. So that's what he said. Apologies, I have been corrected on my pronoun usage there. That's what he said in the video. So I don't know why you would even bring that up as if it's relevant. Anyway, but this is Jyoti Brar, the communist transphobe, to whom is being referred.
Now, I don't know whether what Jyoti Brar said about the ideology being promoted by many transgender activists today is correct or not. I simply don't have the knowledge. I've heard people from both sides of the issue talk, and they both say things that are very persuasive.
Now that's okay. I mean, I don't quite know what Jyoti Brar said that was remotely persuasive, but okay. If you didn't know about it, educate yourself, you ignorant twat. And B, if you didn't know enough about it, why did you ask her about it? Because if you're asking someone about a very contentious topic that you don't know a lot about, they could say something that's absolutely hideously awful and you wouldn't know about that, and you wouldn't be able to fight back, or not even fight back, but like you wouldn't be able to push back on that in any way whatsoever, and you would just allow hateful bullshit on your channel without even really knowing about it or being able to push back against it in any way whatsoever. You're essentially allowing an open, free platform to someone to potentially spout bigoted views and not being able to do anything about that because you're ignorant of the topic. And again, you brought it up in the conversation. You specifically asked Jody Bra. You weren't previously talking about it and then it came up. You specifically asked her about her and her part of the the CPGBML, Communist Party of Great Britain Marxist-Leninist. Her and the CPGBML's position on the transgender issue. That you literally asked her about that, even though you don't know anything about it. So to talk about it is phenomenally irresponsible. And you just allowed a transphobe a free platform to spout transphobic shit and hurt that part of the working class, which we talked about earlier. So, fuck you.
I just don't know enough about it. However, even if Jyoti Brar were to be dead wrong about this issue, even if everything she said was completely wrong, that would not take away from the fact that Jyoti Brar is an amazing, heroic, anti-imperialist activist. And this is at the root of one of the greatest
Okay.
crimes that this internet milieu, this cesspool of pseudo-leftists commit.
Interesting that you would call someone else a pseudo-leftist. And also, is your camera from the fucking Stone Age? My camera's bad. But, I mean, he's got Russia Today money. The fuck's going on here?
Jyoti Brar and the Communist Party of Great Britain Marxist-Leninists have been on the forefront of struggling for the rights of working people in the United Kingdom.
They haven't. They're a tiny, tiny organisation. Trust me. As a person involved in leftist circles here in Britain, I can tell you the CPGBML are nothing. I don't know their official membership numbers or anything, but they're nothing. They're not on the forefront of anything, apart from irrelevancy, basically, you know.
Furthermore, they have been on the forefront of opposing imperialism. Nope. Jyoti has traveled to Palestine to stand with the Palestinian people. Jyoti traveled to Libya to offer support to the people of Libya as they built socialism on the African continent in the face of sanctions and attacks from the United States. The Communist Party of Great Britain Marxist.
So Jyoti Brar is a tourist, is what you're suggesting there. Jyoti Brar went on holiday to Palestine and Libya, two more unorthodox destinations for a jet setter, but she went on vacation, motherfucker. Let's not big it up too much. The word he used about her was heroic. I specifically pointed it out. Heroic. She's a tourist, motherfucker. The hell is wrong with you? That's what counts as heroic? Like, what? Like, if she'd gone to fight with the fucking YPG in Syria or some shit, that would be heroic. That's actually putting yourself in some real danger. She went on fucking holiday. Jesus.
Leninist and Jyoti Brar beat the drum very loudly that socialism is an alternative to capitalism, and that the banks, factories, and industries can be organized to serve public good and not profits. Is it possible that great revolutionary activists who do great, important, amazing work to oppose capitalism and imperialism can also make mistakes? Yes, it is, but not according to Mr. Thoughtslime.
Again, Thoughtslime did not refer to Jyoti Brar as, like, irredeemably evil. He literally just said she was transphobic. Which, like, I mean, yeah, there are loads of people. Like, I mean, initially the way, you mentioned earlier, Fidel Castro. Initially, the Cuban government, the revolutionary Cuban government's attitude towards homosexuals was terrible. It was very much of its time, by the way. It was America was arresting and beating and generally being shitty towards gay people as well. As you know, it wasn't just the Cuban government, but the Cuban government got past that in the end, thankfully. But the point is, for all of the good that the Cuban government may have done, its attitudes were terrible, and I think most leftists would accept that that was the case, including Thoughtslime. So, the idea here that there's no nuance in the thinking of this internet leftist milieu, as you describe them, is just farcical. And anyway, it's not just farcical; it's a fucking lie. You're a liar, Caleb. Anyway, so Caleb's understanding here, and it's only Caleb that understands this clearly, that great revolutionary leaders can have flaws. And again, mention that he says great revolutionary leaders. The person he brings up is an interesting choice, let's say.
If you say one thing that he disagrees with, not about human rights, but rather about ideology, you're a Nazbol, that's what he referred to me as, and not only are you wrong, but you deserve to be beaten up. That's basic.
Firstly, fantastic editing there. And secondly, at no point did Thoughtslime say you deserve to be beaten up. That's, again, you made that up. That's a complete fucking lie. And secondly, he called you a Nazbol because specifically you are a Nazbol. I showed earlier in this stream you talking with not just, you weren't just sat next to Alexander Dugin, the founder of Nazbolism. You were literally saying, "Oh yeah, I read your book and I agreed with it," and then went on to parrot many of the same points he makes. So I mean, Thoughtslime didn't just, flippantly call you a Nazbol because you didn't push back against transphobia. He called you that because you are that. He called you a Nazbol because you are in fact a dirty fucking Nazbol. Okay? Good stuff.
Basically what he's arguing here. He would have myself, someone who has been very outspoken in opposing all forms of oppression. He would have Jyoti Brar, a prominent leader of communist activists and a woman of color in the United Kingdom, attacked as Red Browns and Nazbols because we apparently aren't on board with him, not about the human rights of transgender people, but about an ideological question of which he has a very specific view.
Again, at no point did Thoughtslime call for violence against either you or Jyoti Brar. That's a lie that you just said. And again, I hate to have to reiterate it, but he's kind of repeating himself now. It's the question of ideology, and the question, or the point that you're making, that it's ideology, not human rights, which is fundamentally the issue here, because you're essentially saying that you don't view trans people as the gender that they say they are. You only want to go by what they were assigned as at birth, right? That's the ideological question, quote unquote, that Jyoti Brar is debating and putting forward. So the fact that you're advocating for that, or saying that that's an okay thing to say, is pretty fucked up. And of course, how do you even know that the criticisms that are being made of Jyoti Brar are incorrect when you admitted earlier that you don't know enough about the topic to comment? And you're attacking Thoughtslime for criticising Jyoti Brar when you don't even know if that criticism is just or not, which is fucking ridiculous. Like, please, for the love of God, Caleb, educate yourself.
Jyoti Brar, like myself, is a communist. However, this understanding that I have that sometimes people can take very good progressive views on some issues while being problematic and very wrong on others doesn't simply apply to communists. I have been widely attacked because I will defend and uphold the role played by the black minister Louis Farrakhan. Minister Louis Farrakhan of the nation.
Louis Farrakhan. Oh, so to refute the point that he's a Nazbol, to refute the point that he might have Nazi inclinations, he's now going to throw up as a great revolutionary leader one of the most disgusting anti-Semites in the world. Caleb, I don't think you fundamentally understand how, like, putting a counter argument is supposed to work. You're not supposed to give your opponent more ammunition. I mean, you can't win that firefight. That's idiocy on a massive scale. Well done. Louis Farrakhan is a fucking hideous piece of shit, okay? He really is one of the most nasty, bigoted anti-Semites on the planet. He has referred to Jewish people as Satan. Not some Jewish people. He's referred to the Jews, all of the fucking Jews, every one of them, as Satan, which is despicable if you believe in Satan, as he does. I don't believe in Satan, but I know what he means when he says Satan. Yeah. He's not saying it from my point of view, which would be that Jews don't exist, which would be an even more outstanding claim, because I've definitely met Jewish people. I know at least some of them. I can't attest to every single Jewish person in the world that they exist, but I know that some of them definitely do. So that would be a strange claim. Why did my mind go to that place? That's weird. Anyway, so yeah, Louis Farrakhan, horrific anti-Semite, and so Caleb brings up this example of a person who he supports who's problematic, and again, he's not just problematic; he's fucking evil. He brings up this example to refute the idea that he might be a bit of a Nazi. I mean, it's an interesting direction to go in. We'll see where he takes this.
Of Islam is not a communist, and there are things that he has said about Jewish people and about the LGBT community that I vehemently disagree with. However,
and again, but this is the thing, Caleb. And to the point we mentioned earlier, where he, quote-unquote, destroyed white nationalism. No, he didn't. He disagreed with it. And again, he's saying here he disagrees with the things that Louis Farrakhan has said about Jewish people and gay people and, or, well, LGBT people, he literally said, but whatever. That's not really the same thing. Just saying, I disagree with this thing is not really opposing the thing as such. Like, if you want to refute the idea that you're a Nazi, maybe you could put some tiny amount of passion into actually saying that's fucked up. Don't, you know, why are you saying this thing about Jewish people or gay people or women or white nationalism or whatever, right? Like, why are you saying these things about these things in this way? That's disgusting. That's reprehensible. He never says that. He doesn't destroy anything. He's just saying, well, I don't agree with that. Well, thanks. What a fucking ally you are. Like, what the kind of bullshit is this? What kind of mealy-mouthed crap? Just so you can have, like, a ideological cover is basically what he's doing. He's ideologically covering his ass. That's all that's happening there. It's so embarrassingly obvious that that's what he's doing. Even though I'm sure he agrees with some of the things that are being said about the bankers.
Realize that there's a lot more to Minister Louis Farrakhan than these comments. Minister Louis Farrakhan organized the Million Man March, one of the most important civil rights and black community empowerment demonstrations in the entire history of the country. Minister Louis Farrakhan's organization, the Nation of Islam, is in communities, helping people to get off drugs, serving prisoners, serving low-income people, providing...
Right, yeah, but I mean, there are organisations that don't do anti-Semitism that have done that as well. Like, I mean, again, an example you could have used, I suppose, would be the Black Panther Party, who did have some problematic elements, but also did, like, you know, children's breakfast clubs and stuff, so that black kids actually got a fucking breakfast. Because, you know, growing up in the projects or whatever, a lot of young black kids didn't, and so they hurt them academically and all the rest of it. And they were out there doing that. You could have used that as an example. There are loads of organisations that do that kind of thing and can put on, you know, big demonstrations and stuff, but also not do the anti-Semitism and the anti-LGBT stuff. Like, I don't know why you would stand someone as fucking awful as Louis Farrakhan. It's really strange.
Providing services Minister Louis Farrakhan is anti-imperialist, and he always makes the point of linking the struggle for black freedom in the United States with the struggle of people around the world.
Well, we'll get onto that in a second. But he also links the oppression of black people to the Jews. The Jews! So, I mean, again, you can't divorce his quote-unquote anti-imperialism and his anti-Semitism. It's all linked, because he thinks the Jews run everything. He's a fucking lunatic and a really dangerous racist. But again, he's like, oh, let's just, let's circle jerk for Louis Farrakhan. Woo! Like, oh my god. This Nazbol prick, really.
Against U.S. imperialism. And I think that despite the problematic things that Minister Louis Farrakhan says and believes, he plays a very dynamic and important role. And let me add that in 2011, when NATO bombs were falling and Libya faced a bombing and an onslaught at the hands of U.S. imperialism, the Trotskyites were cheering for that intervention.
Are these people Trotskyites? Aren't they just like anti-Gaddafi people? Are these Trotskyites in any way? Like, how? What? Anyway.
Why? Oh, Gaddafi's a dictator. Gaddafi's a Stalinist. Gaddafi's an imperialist. But
well, Gaddafi, I don't know if he was necessarily a Stalinist, but he was a dictator, and he was an imperialist, yes.
Here is what Minister Louis Farrakhan, not a communist, said.
Why do you hate Gaddafi? Does he share the wealth of Libya with the poor? Well, if he does, and he does, doesn't that make you, America, look bad? America is ruled by special interests, not
Jews. He means Jews, Caleb. I think you would know that if you knew anything about this man. When he says special interests, he means Jews. But you're not gonna know. You're just gonna play this completely in support of what he's saying here. And again, this is you trying to refute the idea or the notion that you might be a Nazbol.
By the needs, rights, and interests of the American people, and you dare to say that the Arab world that is rising wants your democracy? No. They want liberty, they want justice, they want equity, they want a government that serves the needs, rights, and interests of the people. That's what they want, and this is why Muammar Gaddafi said, this is not Egypt, this is not Tunisia, this is not Bahrain, this is not that, because he has looked out for the needs, rights, and interests of the Libyan people. That does not mean to say that there's no dissatisfaction in Libya, and whether that dissatisfaction is legitimate or not.
Now, even though
I just want to point out, the things that he was saying there are not true. He didn't actually share much of the oil wealth, the obscene amounts of oil wealth that Libya has. Libya should be a nation of plenty for all. The amount of oil they have and have sold for decades under Gaddafi and since then is worth untold hundreds of billions, maybe even trillions. I have no idea. Every Libyan, if the thing that Louis Farrakhan was saying were true, every Libyan would be living in the lap of luxury. It isn't, though. He didn't share that. He was worth fucking billions at the time he was killed and dragged through the streets. Lol. Gaddafi was worth billions. It's absolutely obscene that A, that Louis Farrakhan would lie in that way, and B, that Caleb would play that clip, not just neutrally, which would be bad enough in itself, but he's holding that up as the truth. He's playing that clip in his video saying, look at what he says, isn't that awesome? No, nothing that he said there was awesome. Gaddafi was a horribly corrupt individual who pissed away decades of enormous wealth in Libya and funded any number of terrorists as well, which isn't fucking cool. And again, not just terrorists by like CIA standards. I mean, literally funding fucking terrorists and stuff, like killed innocent people, and impoverished his own people. He impoverished it, but the people of Libya are not in a good place. And again, the Western intervention didn't necessarily help that, In fact, in many respects, it's gotten a lot fucking worse. But the point is, Gaddafi was not some cool fucking dude at all. If you're a socialist, you should despise Muammar Gaddafi. Which is why I do.
Though Thought Slime made the transgender question the focus of his video, I would like to critique his video in other ways, because I believe his ideological flaws are more easily revealed when he speaks about other things. For example, this is him explaining how he seems to understand the class struggle.
The fact that a small handful of rich ghouls owns most of the money and will all die of starvation and exposure if we don't get some of it, even though we're producing more than we need and throwing away almost half of everything at a time when that overproduction is poised to make our planet uninhabitable, just so that the already unfathomably rich ghouls can have a computer readout that says that their wealth increased by 0.0001%, and the only way that you can get the means of your survival is by throwing yourself into perpetual and worsening exploitation forever? Need to worry about making a living and surviving the forthcoming end of the world, while the aforementioned handful of rich ghouls don't.
So according to Mr. Thought Slime, the problem with capitalism isn't that in the pursuit of profits, capitalists are organizing the economy irrationally, and that even though the...
I hate to say, right. I despise capitalism, so nothing I'm about to say is meant to defend it. Okay? When he says it's being organised irrationally, that isn't true. It's organised entirely rationally, but for the benefit of rich motherfuckers. So it's not being done irrationally. That's just not correct. That's a perfectly incorrect analysis. Perfectly incorrect? That's a weird phrase. Anyway, that's incorrect, Caleb. Okay? It's being organised rationally, but for the benefit of, an uber wealthy elite. What we need to do is organise it rationally for the benefit of everybody. So you're just sort of wrong on that point, but anyway.
The levels of productivity are rising, people are getting further and further into poverty. The problem with capitalism is that there's just too many resources being used. There's too many people in the world. We all have too much stuff. We're overproducing, as he put it, and people are just too comfortable, and they're consuming too much.
No, did you notice the switcheroo he did there? Because what Thought Slime said was overproduction. What Caleb has now transferred that into is overconsumption. And those two things are different, because we're throwing away huge amounts. We produce enough food that we could feed everybody. We don't. We throw away obscene amounts of food, milk, everything that could be used to feed the billions of people either starving to death or living below adequate nutritional levels. Billions of people. So the point isn't that we're producing so it isn't that people are over consuming, it's that we're overproducing and wasting fuck tons of it. You're not even, this is the thing, I wonder if at any point the likes of Russia today will finally realise that they're wasting their money on idiots like Caleb Maupin, because who's convinced by this piss poor propaganda? Anyone? I don't think so.
That's not Marxism. That's called Malthusianism. And Malthusianism is an idea that Karl Marx thoroughly refuted. Mr. Thought Slime should read Theories of Surplus Value and read how Karl Marx completely refuted this ideology that there are limited resources in the world and that we're headed towards some kind...
Well, no, Karl Marx didn't at any point refute the idea that there are limited resources in the world, because there literally are limited resources. The planet is not infinite, okay? And I don't think Karl Marx was stupid enough to even try and suggest that there are not limited resources. But let's say they're not limited below a level that we need for humanity to survive. Okay, it's perfectly plausible that he refuted that concept. Refuted the concept of Malthusianism. But as Thought Slime's video didn't remotely go near Malthusianism, it's not relevant at all. Your straw man is shit, Caleb. look, it's obviously a straw man.
Of apocalypse unless we can drastically reduce the human population and get rid of useless eaters.
Yeah, I'd like you to bring up the point at which Thoughtslime used the phrase, or anything akin to the phrase, useless eaters. Please show me that, because I was under the impression that Thoughtslime wasn't some sort of crazy genocidal lunatic. Maybe I'm wrong. If you can show me the point at which they said we need to murder all of these useless eaters, then I will reappraise my assessment of Thoughtslime. But I think you might just be talking shit, and that Thoughtslime at no point said that. You're just making stuff up again.
The ideology of Malthusianism is an ideology that was used by the British Empire to murder millions of people all over the world, in India, in Africa, in Ireland, and many other places. Marxists and socialists...
I mean, yes and no. It's complicated. There are lots of other things that go into it. It wasn't just Malthusianist thinking. Like, Malthusianism was an excuse sometimes used by the British Empire to do horrifically evil things, but it was mainly just how can the British ruling elite most ably profit from the situation. It was just basic imperialist greed that underpinned the British Empire. Yeah, I mean that's a minor point. I just thought it was worth, as I do history and stuff. I just slightly annoyed by the weird way he's framed that. Well, the British Empire was monumentally evil, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like there was an actual philosophical underpinning to it other than rich people want to extract as much wealth from these funny little brown chaps as they can. That was literally it. Now, when I say funny little brown chaps, I'm saying that's from their perspective. That's how they viewed these people. Yeah.
Do not believe the problem with capitalism is that it allows people to consume too much and breed too much. That's not what Marxists have ever espoused.
And it's also not what Thoughtslime espoused. Again, please do show me the bit where Thoughtslime's like, you know what we need to do? We need to stop people breeding. We need to mass sterilisation now. I didn't see that video on Thoughtslime's channel. By all means, please link me to it if it's there. I'd love to see that, because I'll definitely call that shit out. But I suspect again that Caleb's just making things up again.
Not anywhere in the writings of Karl Marx will you ever find the phrase limited resources, or will you ever hear predictions of an ecological disaster unless the human race stops consuming and we reduce the human...
By the way, you can actually find limited resource in Marxist writing. In response to this whole thing, leftists have kind of jumped on Caleb, because fuck Caleb. And people have literally had like photoshops with the highlighted bits where Marx talks about limited resources. Because again, Karl Marx wasn't an idiot. He knew we live on a finite planet. But again, wasn't suggesting that there wasn't enough to go around, because that's literally what sort of underpins communism as a concept. There is enough to go around, and we should share it around, you know. But there is obviously a limited resource. Of course there is. There's a finite amount of anything on Earth. Again, don't get into the topic about infinite universes. Take me back to my stoner days. I used to have a thing when I'd get high and I'd think about the edge of the universe and then think, well, there must be an edge because there's an end to everything. But what's after the end? There's more space, and then there's an edge, and then there's more space, and it just went round and round. Don't get into that thought, Kev. It's silly. If you mention it on stream, people will think you're crazy. Glad I didn't mention it, though. But yeah, on Earth, there's a limited amount of resources. There is, obviously. So... anyway.
Human population. Those are racist Malthusian propaganda points that have nothing to do with Marxism. Marxism believes that if the banks, factories, and industries can be operated to serve public good and not profits, and if human reason and creativity, not the irrational pursuit of profits, can be placed in command of economic activity, the human race can go far beyond and begin producing a lot more, and using resources in a much more rational way.
Well, a much more efficient way. Again, rationality is based on what you're trying to achieve. Okay? rationality, it is in terms of capitalism wanting, or the capitalist system being structured to make rich people richer, it's enormously rational and is doing its job phenomenally well right now. But it's not doing it efficiently for the world, which is the point, right? So, I mean, yeah, anyway.
It's only because of capitalism that the outdated, outmoded, irrational, inefficient mode of fossil fuel-based economy still exists. We need to get out.
Interesting that you take the blood money of Vladimir Putin, who literally his entire system is built on fossil fuels. Like, Russia's exports of fossil fuels are like one of the only things it does, because its economy is so stilted for a number of historical reasons. Let's not go into it. But yeah, like you're being paid by petrochemical money to pump out this shit, which arguably is more toxic, not necessarily to the atmosphere, but to humanity. Yeah.
Of petroleum and natural gas as the basis for running our global economy. We need higher forms of energy, like perhaps fusion. We need to expand the space program. We need a more efficient way of raising people out of poverty and producing the energy needed.
Apologies if you can hear the dog barking. It's not my dog. It's a dog that lives, just over there. But the windows have to be open because it's hot as balls. I've got a fan on as well. Apologies if you can hear that. But needs must when your balls are fucking swimming.
For life, and that if we don't do it soon, there will be some ecological problems. But the issue at hand is not that human beings are consuming too much, it's rather that the economy is organized in an irrational way because it's owned by private capitalists who exploit workers to make profit.
But again, that is the rationale. I mean, I don't know, it's because it seems like I'm defending capitalism. I'm not, okay? I think capitalism needs to fuck off forever. Otherwise the planet's going to die. But the point is, it's what is the rationale behind it. Capitalism has become enormously efficient at funneling money to the top of the socio-economic ladder. It's working functionally in an amazingly rational fashion. It's just not efficient for the entirety of humanity or for the further continuation of the planet. But whatever.
Profits, and in their naked pursuit of profits, they're endangering the environment and threatening human progress.
That's basically true, yeah. I agree with that last point.
But watching this video forces me to ask some more questions about Mr. Thought Slime.
Like, is he a Jew? Sorry, no, that's... I was channeling my inner Louis Farrakhan there. Silly!
His beliefs and his motivations. Take a look at this part.
Me and a black dude might be equally exploited working at a Borger King together. Say you're working at Borger King. Your coworker comes to you because they know you're a big-time lefto, big-time workers' rights kind of person, and they're like, hey, I think I might be trans, and I want to start to transition, but I'm really afraid that if I do, I'll lose my job.
Borger King.
Borger King. Can I get some Borger Kings in the chat, people? Let's see some Borger Kings. This man's a fucking idiot. This creature here is an idiot. Okay? Caleb, you fucking twat. Right. I can't believe I have to make this point. Thought Slime does sort of comedy involved in the political dialogue thing because, that's vaguely how, people want to watch their media. You sat in a fucking in a suit, even though you've got a wire behind you, it's so poorly framed. Anyway, you sat in a suit in your house just ranting into a shit webcam isn't very appealing as content. So they do jokes as well. He does jokes in his videos. So when he mispronounces Borger King or mispronounces Burger King as Borger King, it's a sort of a comedic bit. That's all that's taking place there. But you seem to think that that's literally how Thought Slime thinks Burger King is pronounced. God. Oh, fucking hell. It's like a 12-year-old who thinks he's got a gotcha. Like, it's just... what? Oh, anyway. Burger King gang, rise up. That's what I say. Anyway. I love that there's a Burger King emoji. Oh, God. Anyway. Hang on, I can show it on chat. There we go. Look, it's in the chat there. Anyway, yeah. So let's see what Caleb extrapolates from from Thought Slime not being able to pronounce Burger King, which is definitely real.
Now, I really doubt that Mr. Thought Slime has ever worked in fast food.
Thought Slime has 3 videos on his channel about the time that he worked in fast food for many years. Worked at apparently a rather famous in Canada coffee chain called Tim Hortons, and then worked at a Pizza Hut shop. Yeah, so like, you're just wrong, Caleb, on every level there. Which again, I mean, there are lots of things you don't seem to know a lot about, and maybe you should learn about them before talking about them, Caleb.
However, I did work in fast food when I was a college student. One summer, during my college years, I actually worked at a sandwich shop that was fast food in the Cleveland area near the college I went to. And I'll tell you, that was a miserable job. I mean,
he had a summer job, everybody. Oh no. Oh no. He took a day trip into working class culture and he didn't like it. Motherfucker. Thought Slime, or the actual human being behind the Thought Slime channel, is worked in those shops, worked in those fast food positions to live, to literally get by day to day. You are a day tripper. You are a pretend person, okay? Not pretend person, a pretend working class person. Now, that's fine in its own way. You can't help the station in which you're born in life. But don't pretend that you're the true working class individual here, when Thought Slime literally lived that life. You had a summer job while you're in college for one summer. Like, fuck you, man. Hey, what position are you in to tell Thought Slime about working class life? Yeah, you're full of shit.
I mean, they were constantly driving you faster to make those sandwiches and churn out those orders. It was very, very difficult to keep up the pace. And I'll tell you one thing. The last thing that I ever did when I was working, assembling hamburgers and running the fryer at a fast food place, was to talk to my coworkers about their gender identity. We weren't sitting there and having group therapy and talking about discrimination or how we felt about our gender identities. We were being...
Again, so if you talk about your gender identity, that's just group therapy. Oh, it's pathetic. Like, I've worked many jobs in my life, Caleb. Thought Slime has as well, because we're both actually working class people, whereas you're not. And you talk to your co-workers about like everything, like not literally every single thing, but loads of different things to do with their individual life circumstances or politics or current events or whatever, right? Because you spend lots of time with them. You spend more time with them than the people you actually like, which is, you know, unfortunate part of capitalist production, but there we go. So you spend hours and hours and hours at a time with these people. You get to know them. You talk about things, including gender identity, although not exclusively. Yeah, and people were probably less likely to talk to you about it because you're a dickhead. Like, why would someone knowing that you're this cold, robotic, heartless piece of shit sit there and say, oh, I tell you what, I'm going to go and talk to Caleb about my, you know, confused gender, or my not confused gender, like identity or expression or whatever. Like you're having some issues with that. You wouldn't go to Caleb because he's horrible. So, like, yeah, obviously you weren't talking about it, but that doesn't mean that workplace did not see those conversations. It's just you weren't involved, which is not surprising.
Being driven to work harder and harder and harder. Yeah, so he seems a little bit out of touch when he's giving us a lecture about transgender people at Borger King.
He said it again. Borger King. Oh, I do so love me a Borger King. There you go, some free advertisement for a restaurant that doesn't exist.
Let's give the actual Marxist approach to the issue of anti-transgender bigotry that one might experience among one's co-workers at a fast food restaurant. The Marxist answer has always been solidarity. But there are many words.
Yeah, and literally, the fucking point, you daft bastard, that Thoughtslime raises in their video is that of the two responses you could realistically have to, or not the two, but two responses you could have to someone saying that they might be trans and they're scared of their employer getting rid of them or discriminating against them in some way, is either to say, yeah, I support you. We'll fight through this because, you know, employers are shit. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the basic gist of what Thoughtslime said. Or, no, you're delusional, you're a piece of shit, whatever. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but that's the basic gist. So the point was that one of those responses is good and one isn't. And not just that, but that the response that is being advocated for by Thoughtslime in that situation is the one where you build solidarity with a trans person in the workplace. So again, I don't know the point you're really making, other than just, I suppose, lying by omission or taking him out of context or whatever. I don't know.
Workers in the United States right now, not just at fast food restaurants, but at all kinds of places, call centers, coffee shops, the tech industry, automakers, who have been taken in by the far-right ideology. They have been told that their problems are caused by immigrants.
People who've been taken in by Alexander Dugin, perhaps, Caleb.
Their problems are caused by black and brown people. Their problems are caused by the lack of a police state and the government being too soft on crime and not locking up enough people. A lot of working class people have been led to believe that the reason that the next generation of workers are stuck in a cycle of low-wage, short-term service sector jobs, like fast food, is because of some kind of liberal cultural Marxist conspiracy.
Yeah, like Trump supporters and stuff, right? But you clapped Trump earlier, didn't you? You fell for Trump's fake populist bullshit because you're a moron. Like, I mean, I agree with the general point he's making here. People have absolutely falling into the trap of right-wing scapegoatism, but so have you, really. It's just you're too dishonest to come out and say it's the Jews. It's sorry, international banking elites. You can almost hear the echo marks, can't you? I'm not going to literally say parentheses, but that, you know, that's what he means when he's saying that. Anyway.
Well, the job of the Marxist is to show the real reason why workers at Burger King are so underpaid and hard.
Pronounce it correctly. It's Borger King, dickhead. Oh, fuck's sake, why does it keep doing that?
Worked, why the United States is declining, why living standards are going down overall, and why there is such a rise in poverty and suffering in the Western countries. Their job is to show that this is because of the billionaire banker ruling class that dominates the global economy and is
the billionaire banking ruling class. Now, I think it is the billionaire banking ruling class, but when I say it, I don't mean Jews. When Alexander Dugin says it, he does mean Jews. When Caleb Maupin says it, I very strongly suspect he also means Jews. And when Louis Farrakhan says it, he definitely means Jews. Yeah, that's literally it.
Making super profits by grinding working people.
By the way, this is the image. What it's split into two parts. The thumbnail for this video on Caleb's channel is half an image of Thoughtslime, and then this image, because Caleb, Thoughtslime serves imperialism, a different kind of socialism. Yeah. Thoughtslime's massive supporter of imperialism. Obviously, it's not as if they have loads of videos on the channel about how imperialism's shit. You know, whatevs.
All over the world, not just in the United States, into greater poverty. And workers who've been taken in by anti-transgender bigotry or anti-immigrant bigotry or racism.
So, Jyoti Bra, for instance. Oh, fuck.
Or whatnot, need to understand that by lifting up those who've been the most oppressed by capitalism, whether they be black workers who suffer from police brutality and discrimination, whether they be gender nonconforming individuals, that by lifting up the most oppressed and
gender nonconforming, that was the phrase I was looking for. When I mentioned earlier, I said non-binary, but I meant gender nonconforming as well. Yeah, anyway. Thank you, Caleb, for making me remember a phrase from about an hour ago now.
joining arm in arm in solidarity, that they can become empowered. That by standing up and organizing resistance against the billionaire banker ruling class that controls the world.
He means Jews.
And fighting back by fighting to establish a government of action that fights for the working class and would force the economy to serve the people and not simply operate in the interests of profits for private corporations. By doing that, all workers can advance.
Yeah, and Thought Slime literally makes that point. That the response that they're advocating for, not the one that Jyoti Brar is advocating for, by the way, they advocate for the other one, it would appear. Standing in support with the trans person and being sympathetic and generally pleasant to them would be the one that would actually get people on board, that literally would build the solidarity that you talk about. And they literally, Thought Slime literally makes the point in the video that he made that the fight against capitalism and imperialism and all of that would help the trans person, and the fight against transphobia helps in the fight against imperialism and all of that. They literally make the point in the video.
Working class people taken in by bigotry and hate need to understand that that bigotry and hate serves the billionaires and bankers, and that solidarity is the way out. But you can't do that, according to Mr. Thought Slime.
Even though Thought Slime literally says that they want to try and build the solidarity with the trans people, you dickhead.
And it's a problem. You take a variety of factors and reduce it down to simply class. And sometimes you gotta do that. Sometimes it's a useful shorthand. But it may have the unintended, or in some cases, very much intended, side effect of erasing or making apologetics for someone else's oppression.
See, according to this pseudo-leftist milieu, if you talk about working people, if you talk about class struggle, if you rant against the billionaires and bankers and monopolists that rule the world,
I think he's talking about Jews again.
You're a fascist.
At no point did Thought Slime make anything like that claim. Caleb, you lying fuck. No. When Thought Slime makes the point there about intersectionality, they're not saying if you talk about class, that's bad. They literally open the video up with that exact point. For fuck's sake.
According to them, working class is a fascist buzzword.
No, it's a buzzword used by Nazbols because they don't literally mean the working class. They mean like white people or whatever. No, it's not a fascist buzzword. Obviously, you're just lying again.
According to them, working families is somehow a discriminatory phrase. Any appeal to people on the basis of advancing their living conditions and building a better life, doing that is unacceptable.
Obviously not. Thought Slime's an anarchist who wants to do, the exact thing you just described by progressing the living situation of working people. I mean, it seems like I'm just repeating myself, but it bears repeating, I think, that Caleb's just lying.
In their worldview. For them, socialism is not about working people casting off their bigoted ideas, standing arm in arm, fighting back against the billionaires and bosses.
It is. That's literally what it is.
Seizing control of the means of production and reorganizing society so that growth is unlimited and all poverty can be eradicated.
Again, how can growth be unlimited? We live on a finite planet, Caleb. Come on.
No. For them, socialism is about the individuality of artists and middle-class intellectuals, and them standing up
What are you talking about?
Against the mob of inferior rabble who don't go to NYU to learn about these abstract gender theories that you...
God almighty, could he be sounding anything more like your average fucking right-wing shitlord now? Oh, they go to colleges to learn about all the fancy words. Like, motherfucker, please use the word postmodernism. Please, I fucking dare you.
Must immediately agree with, or else you're the equivalent of Adolf Hitler. I think the best way to understand the difference between this individual and myself is simply to look at the name that he gave himself, Thought Slime, and the image in the background of his video.
Caleb, have you suffered some sort of accident recently? Were you involved in a car accident, perhaps? Did an anvil land on your fucking head? Have you had a lobotomy? What? He called himself Thought Slime. Well, if there's a more pure, unfiltered sign of fascism than calling yourself Thought Slime, I've never seen it. Fascism confirmed.
Mr. Thought Slime has this image of slime, green, gross slime.
Which is clearly a symbol for fascism. It's clearly a symbol for how you need one strong leader to have authoritarian control over your nation and to expel all of the ethnic minorities. That's precisely what that slime is meant to suggest. You've cracked the case, Caleb. You're a genius.
Pouring out of a sewer behind him the whole time he is speaking. I don't find that appealing. I don't enjoy looking at gross, mucus-like looking slime.
Mucus-like? Caleb, are you a cartoon character? The fuck are you talking about? Oh, Caleb, I've laughed so much my stomach hurts, mate. You've fucking injured me with your stupidity.
And I'm not particularly interested in hearing what someone says if they name themselves after something that I don't particularly like looking at.
Obviously, if they name themselves something slightly silly on the internet, you should never listen to them. Obviously, which is why all the tankies who call themselves like Joseph Stalin's moustache or something clearly need to be ignored. Caleb, do you think that might be the case? No? Yes? No? What?
But you see, I'm from the working class. I grew up in a small town.
Are you, Caleb? Because your go-to example of you being working class was you had a summer job in a sandwich restaurant for one summer whilst you're at college, which sounds about as middle class as it gets, really. But whatevs.
People who worked in factories. Working people are trying to get rid of slime.
That's the greatest sentence ever said. Working class people are trying to get rid of slime. Does he mean the Jews there as well? I don't know. It's possible. Who fucking knows at this point? Working class people are trying to get rid of slime. What does that mean, Caleb? What the fuck? Like, there's some tenuous stretches that you encounter on the internet where people try and link things, but the idea of working class people trying to like overthrow capitalism and getting rid of slime, that's really shit, mate. That's fucking poor.
They're trying to get rid of dirt. They don't like the fact that, the infrastructure...
He's definitely talking about Jews there. I can tell. Dirt. We're trying to get rid of dirt.
Structure of the United States is falling apart.
I mean, okay, the infrastructure is falling apart, Caleb, but the thing you're showing there is like the aftermath of a fucking hurricane. It doesn't matter how great your infrastructure is. After a hurricane, there are going to be roads torn up and cars on their fucking roofs and like buildings damaged. It's like a hurricane or an earthquake or whatever the fuck this was. A flood, maybe? I don't know. But it's some sort of natural disaster that's taken place. Look, there are cars on their roofs, Caleb. This is not a great example. You could have gone with like a collapsed bridge. There are several of those in recent American history. Like, it's just a lazy fuck, Whatevs.
That our roads and bridges are in decay. that our water is being contaminated with lead, that opioids and drugs are taking the lives of working people in big numbers, that there's hopelessness and
This is what you are, Thought Slime. You are a corroded pipe with your slime. Your fascist slime.
despair among working people, that so much poverty is taking place. They don't like that. Working people want to get to a better life. They want things to be nicer. They want things to be more hopeful, more secure, more stable, and yes, more clean.
What are you... working class people want things to be more clean? Like, you are really, really stretching on that one. That is... you are going to pull a muscle, stretching that far.
But middle-class intellectuals have another view. They think that dirty things and abstract expressionist art is edgy and...
Caleb, that's from the Woodstock thing where it was like a music festival. That's it. Yeah, people got muddy at a music festival. Wow. Like, I genuinely, what is the point of that? Like, he's got this weird obsession with fucking Jackson Pollock as well in a second. It's just weird.
Exciting. And that is the difference. Folks, there's a reason that the CIA, at the same time, it was covertly funding Trotskyites and anti-communist leftists with its Congress for Cultural Freedom program.
I think he's talking about the Jews again. I mean, I could be wrong, but you know.
Also covertly funded the work of Jackson Pollock and tried to marginalize the school of art known as social realism. Because middle-class intellectuals...
See, and again, he's just doing this anti-intellectual thing of saying, well, this art I like is awesome, and this art I don't understand is bad. Whereas that's not really how art works, is it? Like, you can have by the way, you can have opinions. You can like one style of art compared to another style of art, that's fine. But saying that Jackson Pollock is shit is just wrong. Like, that's not how art works. You can say, I don't like Jackson Pollock, and by the way, I personally am not a massive fan of the work of Jackson Pollock, because it's just a bit odd. But I don't see it as shit, or like subversive. Like, this is some real Nazi shit, like degenerate art like Jackson Pollock. Like, this is some real Nazi nonsense now. The fuck is wrong with you, man?
And the elements in the US government that funded them and support them deep down realize that the danger isn't from people exploring Marxism as an abstract idea. The danger to our society isn't from people debating the concept of gender and what it really means. The danger is solidarity. The danger is populism. The
danger would come if, like, things like transphobia disappeared, because that's a layer of hatred that exists in society that keeps people from fighting the real enemy. So maybe if people like Jyoti Brar could stop being transphobic, that would help. Perhaps.
Danger is working people coming together, putting aside racism, sexism, and all bigoted ideas and all forms of oppression, standing arm in arm and fighting back.
Also, you can tell he's a middle-class prick, because he's only talking about working-class people as like these stupid, racist, sexist simpletons. Like, there are lots of working-class people, like myself, like Thought Slime, who don't live that life and aren't that. Your monolithic view of the working class is really demeaning. Please stop. Please educate yourself, Caleb.
And if you look all over the world, so many countries have broken free from capitalism. And when they've done it, they haven't tried to make their countries more slimy and...
They haven't. That's true. They haven't tried to make their countries more slimy. I mean, neither has Thought Slime. It's a YouTube channel name. Get the fuck over yourself.
Gross. They haven't put up paintings of abstract art and Jackson Pollock.
Fuck
Instead,
Jackson
they have
Pollock.
built some of the most beautiful cities, some of the most beautiful subway systems, the most beautiful gardens.
I mean, to be fair, they have. I went to the Czech Republic. It was the Czech Republic. Yeah, it wasn't Czechoslovakia. It ended a long time before then. The Czech Republic. I went to Prague, and the subway systems and stuff they're really beautiful, man. Fuck, they're gorgeous. But I mean, there are other problems though, Caleb. Like, There were tightly hidden costs to this beautiful subway system, is all I'll say. The system was not as efficient as it would be ideal, let's say.
You've ever seen. Working people are trying to get out of the slime.
They're trying to get out of the slime. Which shows... Go on. It shows clearly that Thought Slime is a fascist again. Because if he weren't, why would he call himself slime, and yet the working class people are trying to get out of the slime? You're a fascist, Thought Slime. It's obvious. Caleb has rumbled your game, Adolf.
We're trying to get out of the cycle of destruction that capitalism has created. But Mr. Thought Slime, he's from a different school of thought. He has an ideology that's about destruction. For him, being a leftist is about tearing things down.
Well, isn't it for you, Caleb? Like, you want to tear down the capitalist order, don't you? Isn't that literally the point of what you're trying to do? Or do you just want to take over and do authoritarian capitalism? I don't know. You tell me.
It's about accusing people of being racist, sexist, homophobic, and shaming them. It's about shaming people for having privilege.
There we go. It's some real Nazbol bullshit going down there. Yeah. Caleb, firstly, when someone's being racist, how do you accuse... Would you accuse them of actually being racist? Would you say that's racist? Or just say, I disagree with that? Which is what you were doing earlier. And not just that, but when you say Thought Slime serves imperialism, is that not you trying to shame them? Because you think imperialism is bad, as indeed I do, and as indeed Thought Slime does. But from your perspective, you're the one making the video title, you're saying that Thought Slime serves evil. Is that not you calling them out and trying to shame them? Because, I mean, once you get into this idea of like, oh, it's virtue signalling, oh, the blah-de-blah-de-blah, all of that shit, it can be inevitably turned back on you when you do the same thing. It's almost as if that's literally how humanity operates, that if you see a thing that's bad, you call it bad, because it's bad. No?
It's about destruction. It's about chaos in the streets. It's about creating instability in society. And it's about destabilizing countries that break out of Western capitalism and staging color revolutions in places like Libya and Syria and Eastern Europe to...
Yeah, that Thought Slime definitely supports all of those American interventions. Well, except that's not true. Except it's literally the opposite of that, but okay.
Overthrow socialist governments because they're not in line with his enlightened Western ideological views. That's his view. But for the rest of us, socialism is about building a whole new world.
So it's about destroying the old world and replacing it with a new thing. Caleb.
About the people coming first and not profits.
Well, I always come first. Hey, it's a sex joke.
It's about humanity coming together. It's about reorganizing.
That's good. Yeah, it's good when you come together. That's the same sex joke, basically. So, you're welcome.
The economy to serve public good and not profits. It's about a whole new way of doing things, where countries don't trade with each other at the expense of one another, but rather there's win-win cooperation, where...
Okay, I mean, that's fine, Caleb, but you stand China, as you can see here, and China is not doing that. China's doing economic imperialism. So, I mean, I'd just... fuck you, you know. That's the basic gist of what I'm saying.
Countries become wealthier by trading with each other, and we no longer have a predatory system where big international bankers beat down developing countries.
Jews. He means Jews.
That's what socialism has really always been about. And in the countries that have built socialism, whether it be the Soviet Union...
Have any countries really built socialism? Or many, anyway. They've tried. I think there have been some noble experiments. I don't think anyone's ever really built it, though. And I think that's your problem, is that you don't want to build socialism. You want to build authoritarianism, and you imagine yourself being the authoritarian rather than being under the jackboot. But okay.
Union, whether it be China, whether it be Cuba, Venezuela, the Ba'athist Arab socialist countries of the Middle East.
The Ba'athist. So Saddam Hussein then, because he was a Ba'athist, wasn't he? You're saying Saddam Hussein was a socialist leader. You are you are a reprehensible human being. Is all I will say.
Other countries around the world. That's what socialism has been about. It's been about making the world cleaner and nicer and more
cleaner. What are you talking about? Look, I'm not saying that's like public hygiene isn't a part of things, but you're really there's such a stretch of an analogy. Just you don't need to do that. It's a fucking YouTube channel now, man. Come on.
Stable, bringing people together, eradicating the divisions that drive people against each other. That's what socialism is about. Real socialism is optimistic. But what Mr. Thought Slime is preaching, a pessimistic view that the world is all going to hell, that we're all using too many resources.
It's literally not saying any of that. And I thought Slime is an enormously optimistic channel, actually. Like, accepting that there's shit things in the world doesn't mean you're not optimistic. Some really hopeful stuff on that channel, if you go and do it. Also, what's wrong with this? Yeah, stop denying our Earth is dying. What's accepting that the climate change is a thing isn't a bad thing, is it? Like, surely optimism involves a sense of realism as well, like that this thing is actually taking place. Surely.
And need to be poorer, that working people are inferior rabble because they don't understand his ideology.
Yeah, Thought Slime has definitely referred to poor people as inferior rabble. I think that's one of his pet names for the working class. Because of the slime, he's a fascist. Yeah. Bingo.
Every progressive fighter and leftist who may have a backward view on one question or other deserves to be beaten up and attacked violently.
Yeah, that's again absolutely correct. The use of slime and that alone means that Jyoti Brar deserves to be beaten up, according to Thought Slime. Somehow, you're full of shit, Caleb.
That worldview is a destructive worldview, and it's not a socialist worldview. And it's not surprising that some of the most powerful institutions in the United States have done a lot to promote such a destructive and pessimistic outlook.
This was God Almighty. That was painful in its stupidity, Caleb. You are a fucking arsehole. But you've been dragged, not just by me, I'm relatively late to the party in this regard, but by lots and lots of other people. You, all of that, basically everything you said in that video was kind of bollocks to some extent. Not necessarily every single point you made was wrong, but because you did make some good points about capitalism being destructive, but they were irrelevant to the point because Thought Slime wasn't disagreeing with you on that, or disagreeing with Jyoti Brar on that. It was about the transphobia. But you were right in pointing out that Borger King is a definite purposeful mispronunciation, unpurposeful, mispronunciation, because Thought Slime literally thinks that it's pronounced Borger King, because Thought Slime, because of the slime, is a fascist. It's brilliant detective analysis. It's like Sherlock Holmes was real, and an American who worked in a fast food restaurant for one summer, but is working class. Honest. And scene. Thank you all for joining me, everybody. This was a lot of silliness and a lot of fun. God, I'm like nearly 3 fucking hours, man. Jesus. Yes. Caleb Maupin is an idiot. Sargon of Akkad is an idiot. I, on the other hand, am smart. I'm a smart boy. Go and watch Thought Slime. Don't go and watch Caleb Maupin or Sargon. And tune back in here at some point in the future, because I'll do some streams and stuff. And yeah, thank you all for your listenings and your watchings. Don't forget to follow me here. Check me out on the YouTubes and the Twitters and the Facebooks, which I think I've linked all of those things on my channel. And we'll I'm off to go and get a Borger King, I think, because they do delicious burgers. And Caleb Maupin isn't an idiot, honest. Pip pip.